It's beautiful.
My kids were outside a lot.
Saturday was a
yesterday,
nice
though.
day.
Yeah. Sunday was a little cloudy and it was very windy.
Mm-hmm.
I came up with every excuse not to exercise. It's like, it's too windy.
It's too soon. It's too far.
No, Saturday I went for a run. It was beautiful. But
All right, we good? Why don't we get going? And,
Okay.
Jim's on his way. We'll at least get the minutes out of the way. Did anybody have any additions, subtractions, modifications?
No.
No? I was good.
well, I had one question,
Brad?
and I said it, and I don't remember this, but it's talking about the size of the lots. And it says every lot is 1250 square feet per bedroom. All parking is on the lot. Minimum lot frontage 50 feet, except for lot 41. And then we added 19, I think, onto that, or 16. But the question is, it goes on, and then it says 3 parking spaces for 5-bedroom single-family units, 5,000 square feet for 4-bedroom units, 500 square feet per bedroom, and 2 parking spaces per unit for duplexes. Is
Yeah,
that right?
that's not right.
I don't remember what the 2.
205.
Let's write it down in the middle. I don't remember what we were using for the
Thought we were using
duplexes.
7,500.
So is it still 1250?
Well, but this is per bedroom, so.
Right. It was.
I think it was 7,500 per duplex, or,
Right, but wasn't that based on 7 bedrooms?
no, that's the fourplex you're thinking of, right?
6 bedrooms? 7,500 is a multiplier of 1250
Yeah,
by 6.
yeah,
So is this supposed to
Yeah,
be
it's
1,250 square feet per bedroom?
yes, and
Okay.
therefore 7,500.
Okay.
1250 per bedroom?
Is the parking?
Which is in your second sentence or third sentence, every lot is 1,250 square foot per bedroom.
Right.
And the duplex is 7,500.
Yeah.
That was all I saw.
Okay.
Did we ever do the minutes for the April 19th meeting?
Thought so.
We did.
I thought last time we
Maybe we
did.
did last time.
I think we did.
You did, you approved, you're thinking you tabled.
That to sort of call this whole thing to
Oh,
order,
right.
like I normally do. Okay, so anyway, this is not the regular, but the Town of Nantucket Zoning Board of Appeals meeting, where the board is deliberating on the Surfside Crossing 40B application. So anyway, back to the minutes. So Lisa, we're gonna make that change,
Yep.
and everything else look good? So can I get a motion?
I'll
to
make that
approve
motion.
them as amended. Jeff, you want to second it?
Yes, I do.
All right, so Jeff's, motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye. All right, I guess we really should wait for Jim. I don't think he will think it discourteous if we start.
No, I think he'd feel bad if we waited.
Yeah, I don't think he would at all.
Yeah, so why don't we?
So why don't we start with just general comments about the working draft? We can
I
do
found a
do it
couple things.
any way you want. We could just go page by page.
Yeah, so it was on, well, I was going to jump ahead to page 6.
Well, let's
Before you get to that,
calm down. But,
page 1,
yeah,
it's just the date, I think that the second paragraph should be April 11th.
Oh, for the letter?
Issued by Mass Housing?
No, second paragraph. The end of the second paragraph.
Last sentence.
The closing meeting date was the 11th. You have it
Oh,
the
April.
11th later on.
Okay.
yeah,
Just give a preliminary comment on the
sure,
working draft.
absolutely.
Mr. Chair, good afternoon, everybody. George Pucci from KP Law, Nantucket Town Council's office. So I prepared the working draft for discussion purposes only. I just want to note for the record that the draft is only based on information that's in the record and anything that you discussed during your deliberations. There were a few sections of narrative portions of the decision that I wanted to address with the board before I fill those in. I think it
Okay.
makes sense
Here.
for the context.
Tucker, do you
of-
want one?
I think it makes sense for
an
the
extra.
context of this application.
Oh,
and
he
the
has to
way-
wait?
Well, I don't know how much.
Hold on.
What's
Yeah,
happening?
What do you-
Tucker can look at that, he's a
Okay.
client, yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry.
So, I thought it was important for the context of where you ended up with your decision in this case, that we talk a little bit in the decision itself about your findings with respect to how the application process and public hearings went on this matter.
Right.
I think that's important. A legal jurisdictional issue that I think is important for you to raise by way of findings, or a narrative portion in subsection C in Roman section 4 would be about project economics, that there was a lot of talk about reducing the size of certain buildings or unit numbers, and there was never that argument made by the applicant during the public hearings that it rendered the project uneconomic. So I think that's an important issue for you to raise in your decision. You don't have a safe harbor available to you in this matter, but in subsection A, I thought it was important to put a narrative in that about the town's efforts with respect to affordable housing. You do have a approved housing production plan in place. You've made a lot of, the town has made a lot of commitment toward affordable housing. In fact, you would have had a safe harbor available to you in this matter if there wasn't an appeal of a certain project. So I think that's gonna be important in terms of defending this decision down the line. If it ends up being if in the event of an appeal, there ends up being any type of balancing test that goes forward about consistency with local needs, you'll wanna make a case concerning that. Then for conditions specific to this project, there aren't that many. They're just based on what you've deliberated on to date. And obviously, I'm able to make any corrections you want to make about what I set forth on those. There are going to be quite a bit of additional conditions to the project that you should keep in mind. The placeholder sections that I have with respect to like water and sewer, those are this comprehensive permit decision is probably going to end up being close to double the size of the draft that you have in front of you now. And so those will be numbered consecutively once we get to those provisions. So I just kind of wanted to give you an overview sense of that. The way I would recommend doing this is you have the other issue about the HDC process to continue in your deliberations. I would imagine you have questions and comments or edits to this working draft. What I would anticipate doing would be providing a second draft of the working draft, have one more deliberation session where you can really look at what would be the close to final decision that you would be rendering. And then in the final deliberation session that you have scheduled for right before the deadline, I would recommend doing your vote at that time on the project. So if that makes sense, that's kind of.
So that's the June 7th date, I think, right?
So we would have a
Procurement
meeting in
spec.
between now and June 7th.
Correct.
Yeah, I
which
think we have one on the
is
book.
important.
We have one scheduled, I thought.
I booked the room.
Okay.
I will not be here, but I have someone coming.
When is it?
The 31st.
At 1 o'clock? 2
2 o'clock.
o'clock?
Oh, yeah.
May 31st at 2 o'clock?
Okay.
Yes.
And then the 7th would be hopefully the signing of it,
Correct.
or any,
You'd be presented with really the final form after that
Right.
further deliberation session.
And even on the 7th, if we see something, we can make a tweak, because you're going to,
Correct.
Till the 10th.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
all right. Okay. That all makes sense to me, George. So let's just, if you don't mind, if everybody's in agreement, we'll just quickly go through page by page
okay?
with questions for George and/or comments. So on page 1, Ed already mentioned that. On page 2, George, in Roman numeral 3, summary of decision, is this a suggestion that we come up with not come up with, but that we insert a number of units?
We came up with something last time we,
Well, Go ahead,
Yeah,
George.
that raises an issue that, you know, in my travels with the record and based on your deliberations to date, you know, you raised a lot of concerns at the last deliberation session about overburdening this particular site and the existing local concerns that you had, including but not limited to the traffic situation already. And one of the issues you were trying to address is, rather than, you know, reducing the number of units for the project, you were trying to look at the impact that this project would have on the surroundings. And then you were gonna reach, you know, kind of a reasoned decision of where you end up with the number of units involved in the project. So, you know, a couple of things had come out of the hearing. One member, the chair had mentioned about reducing the size of the 8-unit buildings, 4 plexes. One of the other members talked about eliminating the 8-unit buildings in their entirety. So I left it. Ultimately, though, if you are going to end up rendering an approval with conditions of this project, I would recommend approving a certain number of units in your decision. I left it blank for now because really you need to, based on what I've seen in deliberations, it really calls for some further discussion
Okay.
and debate about what you want to do from a site plan perspective, and considering the local concerns that have been raised in the hearing as to what type of size project you want to see on this development site. So ultimately, if you do have an approval with conditions, I would recommend saying you know, a number of units certain. Once you've, you know, reached a decision about that, backed into it by looking at site design concerns and local concerns, what type of a project you end up with. And one thing that you had talked about was giving the developer flexibility. So if you're reducing the size of certain buildings or eliminating certain buildings, you may want to give that applicant the flexibility to, you know, do more with the site as you've approved it, in terms of making duplexes or, you know, combining, whatever it may be. You may want to give them flexibility. So that's another reason why it would be crucial, in my opinion, to have a number of units, you know, specified in this decision.
Okay. Fair enough. I don't know that I think that might take additional thought on our part in terms of the other conditions we thought we were the direction we were taking in terms of lot size, that, you know, 6,500 for 15 bedrooms, for 5 bedrooms, no 8-unit buildings due to the fact.
Does our math have to work? I mean, do we have to, in terms of, because we are putting lot sizes on these certain things, it's not up to us to figure out the math. We could just say, because I had notes that there would be 7 duplexes maybe? No, 7 fourplexes.
It was, go ahead.
40 single family, 7 duplexes, and 4 duplexes? Does that sound
Yeah, it was 47 and 4,
47?
if that is ultimately the
47 and 4.
seven fourplexes, so that's really
28 units.
28 units, so
Right.
it's 68, it's 72 units. If that,
76,
yeah, I was using new math, 76,
right?
yeah. Yeah,
Because so that's sort of the working number at this point, but that will
And
confirm that.
yeah, and George, I'm assuming that is a maximum of,
Right.
and then I would think we would want to further define it based on our deliberations in terms of the health, safety, traffic, et cetera, along the lines of the unit types. In other words, X number of units, 40 of which are single, whatever the numbers work out to be.
Yeah, in other words, you're giving flexibility except to the extent that you're not giving flexibility. Like, you've said already in your deliberations, you feel that 8-unit buildings are out of scale to the neighborhood, and that you don't want those. So you're having a condition in the permit.
Right.
If you vote it that way, that is going to not allow 8-plex buildings. And I mean, just looking at simple math, without getting into detailed math, like if you do all the calculations for lot size and frontage and all of that, where you end up mathematically with the number of units. If you go on a more elemental level, you know, just looking at that elephant in the room of 4 8-plex buildings, if you're not reducing those to 4-plexes, but rather you're eliminating those buildings, that takes 32 units out. If that is a 60-unit project at that point, just basic.
Well, that's not how, yeah, but we added through, you know, added. There were
Right.
3 additional
I think-
4-plex, no, 5 additional 4-plexes.
We want to give them flexibility.
For the record, Ed Marchand, Chapter 40B advisor. I think you do, you wanna protect yourself on the sort of upside maximum, shall be no more than X units, certainly no more than 92 units, we know that. But then I would agree with Ed, you might wanna give a range of single-family units, duplex units, and 4-plex units.
Yeah.
You're eliminating, based upon my understanding, the 8-unit building as a building type.
Yes.
Yes,
You're
that's
saying
the
that
definite.
the only multifamily building that is acceptable to the board is a 4-plex.
Yeah, no, we're eliminating 8-plex because it is basement units, 100% basement units, which is unacceptable.
It's too tall.
It's too tall, it's overwhelming for the site, it's out of character with Nantucket, building with Nantucket in mind, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then we're saying, I believe, that the maximum multifamily building is 4 units.
Yes.
It can't, the 8s can't become 6s. The maximum is then 4.
Yeah,
Right.
but I'm talking on a different level than that. I'm just saying, basically, if you, as opposed to giving flexibility with respect to the buildings A, B, C, and D, as opposed to giving flexibility on those buildings in terms of a reduced size.
Yeah.
If you're eliminating them, I'm just saying, basic math, that takes 32 units off the project. And then where you would give flexibility would be with respect to the other approved units.
Yeah, all right, we're talking about the same thing, I think, just in a different way.
We just want to leave it so that if they decide they wanted to do more duplexes and less 4-plexes, that would also be acceptable. As long as the total number of units doesn't exceed whatever we come up with.
Yeah, as long as no building type is over 4
Yeah.
and no more than 7, which is sort of where we were. 7
No,
4-plexes. They-
4-plexes, but they could do 6 4-plexes and then
An extra duplex.
an extra
or
duplex, yeah, as long
whatever,
as it's
yeah.
divisible by
Yes.
whatever. Okay.
Okay, so we'll fill in that
And then what
number.
does it mean, the question of 76 ownership dwelling units, or there was an extra percentage, parentheses in there is, that doesn't mean anything, right? Never
Where?
mind.
Oh, that's
What, well, you have the.
Oh,
you
that's
have
for the number.
Yeah.
That's for the number, and then you
That's
just write
the-
out the number.
Yeah.
Got it.
Right, yeah, okay.
Got it.
Got that.
So there's no
Thank you.
discrepancy.
On page 2, I'm just gonna jump in.
Yeah, just keep on the same page. If we can just go through it by sort of in order, but go ahead, Ed, we're still on page 2.
Important comprehensive permit decisions is to have a defined term for the plans. And I think in that first paragraph, George, you might want to say collectively, the comprehensive permit plans in quotes. So that's a defined term, so that we don't confuse. There have been so many versions here, so many plans, we want to make sure we define it accurately. Because later on, when the building permit plans get filed, those are now collectively the final plans. So we just want to go through, well, make that consistent.
Okay, I hear you. Now,
What did you suggest calling it? Collectively what?
the comprehensive
Comprehensive
permit
permit
plans.
plans.
Okay.
I mean, I have a note here to, not, sort of related to that. Do we need any language in somewhere that this is a difficult thing to pin down because there really isn't a definitive comprehensive permit
We
plan?
referenced that a couple of times
Yeah.
in there, but
I mean, right.
So,
And also, that's what's gonna be filled in about the applicant's failure to provide information necessary for the board to make an informed decision.
okay.
In other words, that
Got
narrative
you.
isn't gonna conclude, so we're not gonna act on the project, it's gonna say,
Yeah.
this is why, we've conditioned the plans accordingly.
Okay. All right, so can we move to Roman numeral 4? the relevant material facts and findings. The affordable housing production plan and planning efforts, I think it's a great idea. We put that in there. We don't really need to deliberate about that too much. We're all in agreement that that is something we want to reference.
And include the recent town meeting vote on the 25 million.
Okay. I mean, we don't have to state that we agree with it. We're just inserting it, George, or do you want us to deliberate to the extent that you know, we basically agree with the state, that we agree with the housing, the goals?
No, it's just gonna have a narrative about what the
Okay.
town's efforts, and then you're gonna look at it
Yeah.
in your next session.
We're gonna have to agree
Got
to
it.
it when we sign it, I guess.
Yeah.
It's sort of.
Yeah, that's fine.
Well,
I
you're
don't-
gonna see it before you sign it.
Yeah,
You're
yeah,
gonna
that's
see
what I
it for the
mean.
next
Yeah,
session.
okay.
Yeah, we don't need
It's
to.
just a statement of fact.
Okay,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
That's all I wanted to get at.
Was that presented to us during the public hearing, or?
No.
We didn't, it didn't exist?
I believe Eleanor gave it to us at one
Yeah.
point.
Okay, I was just wondering if we saw it.
Yeah.
Because I don't recall
I do recall that.
Supposed to register?
Sure.
Production plan is supposed to?
All right, so 4B, again, this is just going to be a statement of the facts from the record, the failure to provide information necessary for the board to make an informed decision. Is
You know,
that,
one thing that came up about it, and this is not, none of this is etched in stone, remember, this is my recommended structure for the permit.
okay,
And the reason I recommend this section be in here is, especially as you deliberate on this, and as I look through the record to try to do a draft decision, you know, a lot of the things that you're discussing in kind of a cursory manner really, you know, called for more public hearing sessions. It
absolutely.
was a very short discussion about traffic issues in one of the public hearings. I mean, there was a peer review, then the peer reviewers got together, they amended their, you know, recommendations to you. And then there was a very short portion of the public hearing session where people talked about local concerns and their experience with traffic and where they thought the information was lacking. You know, in a better process, you know, that really called for some more debate from you in the public record. So, you know, some of these issues, I think it's important for you to put into the decision about where you're kind of cut short. And even when you end up with the 92 unit plan, I mean, you know, not to beat a dead horse on this, but, you know, there was certainly, it would have really helped the process to be able to go back and forth with the applicant in the public hearing process about your questions and concerns with that and trying to reach a, you know, a mutually satisfactory agreement
Right.
on.
Well, an example is you
plan.
still haven't seen the fire chief's
Yeah, yeah,
stuff, right?
yes. So that's, you know,
We got the fire chiefs.
We did. When did that? I don't remember seeing that.
it just came in.
Just
the-
Oh, it just came in.
A
Okay.
couple days ago, but, yeah, no, do we all, I mean, again, Kiram at the last deliberation brought up the traffic issue and didn't, I think everybody felt that it really wasn't settled, and I think everybody feels, or correct me if I'm wrong, that a lot of issues weren't settled, and with
Completely agree.
additional discussion, I think we would have gotten to some reasonable settlement, but we weren't able to. So, yeah, I wholeheartedly support that paragraph.
Okay.
So,
Me too.
so then on 4C, applicant's failure to justify jurisdictional requirements concerning project economics to support, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, there was absolutely no discussion of that, which makes it difficult for, the only statements made by the applicant that I remember was things were becoming, something might make something infeasible, but there was never any statement that I recall about making the project uneconomic. So we never got to discuss that if one of our thoughts was rendering.
Right, if you were concerned about the size of the 8 plexes, and they said, well, that's part of our program, that's not saying you're rendering the project uneconomic in this condition, in conjunction with other conditions you're imposing to eliminate these buildings, you never had that discussion with them. Another place where it came up was the sewer.
Right.
That was unfortunate. I mean, at the last minute, they're saying, you know, the option that you're presenting to us makes it more expensive.
Yeah,
But
but
that doesn't mean anything for your process. So
No.
those, you know, those are important jurisdictional issues that you want to know.
definitely.
And I think I've asked this before, but is it everything in the aggregate that makes it uneconomic, or could you?
Yeah, either.
Or is it a
alone or
specific-
in the aggregate.
Okay,
The condition that you're imposing either alone or in the aggregate renders the project uneconomic.
okay. So we might impose a condition that alone wouldn't make it uneconomic.
Would not, right?
Would not, and that
But-
would be,
Right.
But 5
Acceptable.
conditions together could.
In the aggregate, then.
Yeah.
They can make that argument.
Okay.
Just to repeat, the standard for whether or not a project is economic is whether the developer's fee as a percentage of the cost is 15% or greater. That's economic. Anything less than 15% uneconomic.
okay.
The question I had on C is, I didn't understand jurisdictional requirements. I always thought of jurisdictional as a Pell, a not-for-profit status, one other thing.
Yeah, I just look at that from a legal perspective. I look at that more as project eligibility. They're an eligible applicant. You have jurisdiction to hear them under 40B.
Right.
But I consider, and it comes up in a couple of the conditions that I have, well, requirements that I would raise a jurisdictional issue if they're saying, well, if they're arguing for the first time that a reduction in the eightplexes or some other aspect of the project renders it uneconomic, and they spent more than a year in the public hearings not making that argument, I mean, I still intend to raise that as an issue.
And then, I know I keep bringing this up, but there's also that, are they saying if they come back with an uneconomic argument, they also are still hanging on to this year-round restriction where they're selling units that could be market value units at a reduced price or depressed price by their choice. So that, I know it's not on hack to deal with that year-round restriction or how that works, but I think it may be an important point to bring up so that it's clear that when they're saying what the feasibility is, I think that was the word they kept using, right? Economic
Or
and
infeasible,
letters
yes.
that they had submitted, but that removing or just taking the eightplexes as an example, removing the eightplexes, making it more, or minimizing the condos, making it less economically feasible, they still have this cushion with those self-inflicted depressed values, which
Yeah,
I
and
think makes it harder.
They argued the whole time that's the heart of their program.
But it has nothing to
They
do-
didn't say the Shy program.
Right, but it has nothing to do with
No.
our program
No.
or HAC's program. That is a self
It's their
put
design.
on. It's
of
their
the
design
project.
of the project. So there was a whole nother layer of us not able to get to the economic feasibility.
And I think there should be a statement about the year-round residence program here. We don't want to leave it silent.
I think it just shows that they have
The
flexibility.
issue will come up at the HAC. If this decision, if it's approved with conditions, they think it's uneconomic, their first stop is the HAC. You'll be preparing briefs and arguments and have your experts there. And that's where the numbers get presented. Remember, there's been a change in how financial reviews work on 40Bs. Had we sufficient time and had the hearing not been closed abruptly, or more abruptly than you wish, they would be here now, they'd see these conditions and say, well, respectfully, we think condition 75 is gonna make the project uneconomic. You'd say, we don't think so, and we're gonna hire a financial peer reviewer. So now that's gonna happen if there is an appeal later. So Susan, it's a really good point. Don't worry about it. It's gonna come about at the HDC hearing.
Okay.
Yeah, I absolutely right, I agree with that, and this is why also I talk about a jurisdictional issue. I have a problem from as your legal representative, allowing and not at least raising the issue as a legal issue to HAC, to allow an applicant basically to almost treat your public hearing process like a sham, so that they can have their public hearing at the HAC. That was one of the issues that came up in the hearings when certain opponents to the project were saying, deny for lack of information, deny, deny, deny. The problem I have with that is the same type of vein. You don't want to end up having the hearing at HAC, having them be your permitting authority. So I was trying to do a balance between the two, but where it ended up was the applicant then short-circuiting you, despite the fact that you listened to our recommendation to keep the hearing going and not deny for lack of information. Then basically the applicant in the end denied you the information and tried to create a process by which they're gonna have this hearing process at HAC. So I think it's an important jurisdictional issue to raise as a threshold issue there. And then if the case, number one, if there is an appeal, raise it as a jurisdictional legal issue, but then the way that appeal would be tried in a de novo way is exactly as Ed is saying. They'll present that evidence then, and then we'll have an expert witness on that.
All right, well, yeah,
But the year,
I think
if
Sue's-
Ed recommends too about putting in the issue about the year-round housing, that it would be in this section, this.
right,
subsection.
and I had a note about it as well, the self-imposed issue. I mean, a lot of this, or almost any of the financial pressure, the supposed financial pressure is self-imposed. If you are willing to sell those multifamily units for less than market, then how can you be making the uneconomic argument?
And I think part of the narrative is gonna be that you thought the proposed development program of 92 units was overburdening the site. The argument the applicant used was that he was going to build these units and sell them at a below market price. That doesn't give license to overburden.
Exactly, and that's what we want, and that,
That's the point.
that is the crux of the issue, the overburdening. You don't get to overburden the site just because you want to provide housing at probably only the first juncture to year-round housing.
And again, George, I don't want to make a big deal out of that, but in the 40B language, the jurisdictional issues are three: site control, project eligibility letter, and not-for-profit public, a limited dividend entity. So I would just come up with some different way to describe that, because I don't think it's a jurisdictional issue as that is defined in the 40B world.
But I see it as a strategy by the
Oh, yeah.
developer to build more units on the site. Because you could probably you could build 5 units on the site total and make it economical. You can build 400 units on this site and make it look economical with numbers. Am I right? I mean, you can sell 5 units for $6 million a piece. I don't know, and make it look right. You can do a 300, and I think them putting in this mid-range pricing allows them to keep a bigger number in there. I think Jeff alluded to this a while back. You could, we want affordable housing, but you could put 7 units on the site, and the developer would make money. So, I think
The
Or
other
it should
crux of the
also.
issue is they were unwilling to deed restrict those
Right.
units.
They're unwilling to establish eligibility requirements.
That's what I meant.
To limit the sales price.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
So I think that's important that's in the narrative. They were that definitely came up. Why don't you just make it up to 200%? No, we don't want to do that, because then they still wouldn't have counted on the shy list. Anything over, right, but,
But there were a number of weaknesses, and then it was gonna be year-round residents, then it became, if you lived there.
6 months and a day.
And there's no
80
way to
days.
enforce it. It's just, it's a,
So,
And you didn't have to be a resident, you could come from Falmouth and buy one of these units.
yeah.
God forbid. All right, so I think we are all in agreement. We want that
Yeah.
type of narrative in there.
Definitely.
And
Anything else? Any other, anything other than what I recommended for that on relevant factual background and findings? You get 4 sections we've talked about. Anything else?
Oh, you mean we're on D now? That's on the third page?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, no, we didn't get to D.
We
yet.
didn't get to
I
D yet.
apologize.
yeah, no, D, overburdened development site and adverse impacts upon local health, safety, environmental design, open space planning concerns. I mean, again, all our conditions that we've come up with to date are related to that. In general, I think it's fairly easy to say that we think the development overburdens the site.
Yeah,
Do
so-
we need to be specific at this point?
Yeah, what's important to have in your decision would be, I always recommend that a board would have findings in support of its
Okay.
conclusions.
Yeah.
And so you really, you're getting right into conditions without really saying the reason why you're doing what you're doing for site design.
Right.
So I do think it's important to have a section, with findings of the relevant factual background as to why you're saying it overburdens the site.
Okay, I mean, I think we can back into it by looking at some of the conditions we've already talked
I'm
about.
gonna provide the section for you based
Yeah.
on the information in the record.
Yeah.
Right.
And then we'll
Yeah,
review
I
it.
mean,
know.
that's great.
Yeah.
But again, we all agree that that should be in there.
Yes, 100%.
So then to George's question, is there anything else other than the A, B, C, D, than those 4 sort of laying out the factual situation? I don't,
So the D includes sewer, right? Local health, safety.
yeah.
Traffic.
Zone 2, water recharge, all those
And
issues.
in that section, is that where we can, I mean, is it appropriate to talk at all about the mobilization of the community, the neighborhood around it? Or is that more?
Yeah, no, I think it's relevant.
Okay.
One thing I should give you as just to mention is, there's an appendix to the decision which will have the entire record.
Right.
So all the opponents, that will all be part of this record. It's incorporated into the decision, but I do think it's important to
Reference
highlight,
it. Yeah.
some of the opposition that you received to the
Right.
project.
Because I do think it's significant that, and yes, there's always opposition to a 40B, but this time there was so much opposition, and I think there was one gentleman who spoke at one of the very first meetings in support of this 40B. Like, I just, not seeing anyone show up to want to be in this year-round housing or to say this really makes a difference for my family or whatever. I just think it's significant.
Yeah, no, I think it definitely should be in there.
It's also important to note how overreaching the 156 unit proposal was,
Right.
Yeah.
so that you can't take credit for going from 156 to 92.
I agree.
The 156 was a,
It was a Taj Mahal.
what did you call it? Shock and awe.
Yeah.
And I'd use those words, and it shocked and awed people to the degree that we couldn't continue with one hearing because we didn't have capacity in the room.
Right. I mean, that was the first time and it was standing room only at the high school. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I think we're all in agreement on these points. I don't Can't think of anything else in terms of a,
We'll let George do
Category.
his thing. And
Yeah.
And then we'll read it.
Yep.
okay, so then requested waivers in, Roman numeral 5, requested waivers and exemption. I'm gonna try to breeze through this relatively quickly because we have limited time. So one looks like pretty much boilerplate, 2 looks like boilerplate. Stop me if you don't agree. 3, again, that's where I had my note about whether or not there should be something about, some of the project's economic viability hinged on these other units that were year-round, but it doesn't necessarily have to be in there.
Right, it's funny, you mentioned 3, because it's a little bit of boilerplate, and then it's not,
No, I'm not saying 3 was
Yeah.
boilerplate.
Homeowner has always toted your rules and regulations, which, as I'm looking at the whole record, there's an interesting one about the burden to demonstrate the waiver of any particular local regulation, bylaw, or ordinance is necessary in order to maintain the project's economic viability. And that's really relevant to what's going on here. So, you want to raise all these issues that not only are you justifying the conditions in your permit by the site review concerns, but you're also justifying it in that they haven't proven that they're
There's been-
entitled to a single waiver.
Right,
Yeah,
there's been no argument that any waiver discussion related to the economics.
Right.
Yeah, and I know we just talked about this, but my notes here are why grant any waivers then, based on what you, I mean, I like this language, but.
Well, that's a question that we can, Appendix C, which is, was going, or is going to be the waiver
The list.
list, isn't appended yet, but we can get to it and decide no waivers, yes waivers.
Right, well, yeah, I
There are
mean, you're
waivers
Wow.
in there.
There are waivers
Yeah.
and
not gonna
waivers,
end
yeah.
up with you will an
Right.
approved project if you say no waiver.
Yeah, I'm not going there, I'm
So
not going
That's
there.
why
Right.
the very next paragraph in this is, although they haven't provided the necessary information under the regulation, the board has reviewed the waiver requests and has granted those that are consistent with
Right.
the protection of general
seems
health,
right.
safety, and welfare.
Okay,
Yep.
so we'll
Yeah, I mean,
get to those.
I understand you're kind of, it's weird, you're on this fence, because if you draft it a certain way, you're saying we don't grant any waivers and we're not approving. Same with the previous section, as we talk about that, section D, the overburdening, I think we're really writing a decision for denying it by putting all these things in there, right? Or,
We're denying it as submitted. but
we're saying we're
it.
approving it, but these things overburden,
Yeah.
doing it, overburden.
We're going to approve it with conditions that we think
Yeah.
that make it.
You're saying the reason
But-
why you're cutting down on the site plan as proposed,
Yeah, okay.
as opposed to denying. And remember, you're still, again, it's a working draft, and that's why I specifically didn't put in that, that's necessarily an approval of anything.
I think it
You're
shows,
still free to deny if you find that your deliberations lead you there, but just keep in mind, you've got a differing burden of proof if you just deny
Right.
versus an approval with conditions.
and I think I don't, maybe both of you said it in the past, it just goes towards the reasonableness of the board and the town for
Yeah,
willing to
right.
work with the project, to say, look, on the face of it, we could deny them all because they haven't even given us any arguments, but we're gonna be reasonable about this and reasonable about it. And there was another one that we found in the waiver list last time, right, that they hadn't asked for, but they needed, so we, even though they haven't asked for it, we're gonna grant it because,
Well,
yeah, it's a reasonable
Yeah.
thing to do. So I think it goes to our benefit to do
And
that.
Jim, remember,
Yeah.
you could substitute the word waiver for 40B. If you were a developer and you didn't ask for waivers, why would you do a 40B and have to sell 25% of the unit?
Yeah, right.
So it's all
Yeah.
about waivers. You're talking about specific waivers in terms of a granite curve versus this, and width of the street, the lot size.
yeah. Okay, so 6 just talks about Appendix C, which we will get to. Then George, correct me if I'm wrong, but 7 looks like boilerplate. If something isn't there, they have to, and they want additional waivers, they can ask.
You know, there's, keep in mind too, there's boilerplate and there's boilerplate. The only thing I ever have on my decisions are boilerplate that matters.
I'm
Certain boilerplate you definitely want to have.
I just don't want to read every word here because I know we're not going to get to it. So, no, I'm not discounting anything you said. I just,
But I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
This is important because very often remember we talked about at the end of the list of waivers, it said, if we didn't ask for a waiver, but you submitted plans that indicate the condition that would require a waiver, and you approve the plans, then they've got that waiver.
yeah, but we put language in here that says that doesn't happen.
That's right.
You had to specifically ask. So when I say boilerplate, I mean, we don't need to discuss it.
Yeah, no, I didn't take it as an insult.
It was well crafted.
Yes, just saying, there's no boilerplate.
I hear you. I misspoke when I said
And
boilerplate.
I would actually put that, you might put it in the waiver section, but I might add that, even if
That
it's
is in the
shown in the
decision
plan.
later.
Oh, okay, good.
Okay.
Yeah, it's in there.
Yeah. Okay. Did anybody else see anything else on page 4?
Nope.
In 6? Grant of permit and conditions there too?
I had a note here on.
Oh, actually, yeah, it's in eight.
Go ahead.
It's in 8. The
8.
thing that Ed just talked about.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
that's it right there. Okay.
Yeah.
yeah.
On number 2 of eligibility, there's a language said to ensure the mass housing will continue to.
What page are you on?
Page 5.
4.
5. No?
I'm on 4, number 2 of that, or maybe mine printed out.
Where's number?
Yeah,
Read it out
that,
differently.
you're on Roman numeral 6, eligibility.
Oh, there we go.
Which is
Page
our
5.
page 5.
Yeah, it's page 5.
This extension language in here, and maybe this is standard, but I just wanted to clarify that as a condition of this decision. I mean, are we really, I know it's under permit and conditions, it's just a technical
Yeah.
thing. And, sometimes we specifically put in there as a condition. But
I don't understand the question, Jim.
Sorry.
You're uncomfortable with the?
in the second sentence, it says to ensure the mass housing will continue to endorse the project, the board requires as a condition of this decision that the applicant demonstrate.
Oh,
Could I
okay.
jump
I
in
mean,
there
it's
because I
not
think
a-
It's gonna make this discussion moot. My understanding, George, and you can confirm this, is that a project eligibility letter is good for 2 years. However, once you submit the comprehensive permit application, the PEL is moot.
Yeah.
So
All right, so this is a
Okay.
bit of,
I would end this, I would say the applicant has provided a project eligibility letter on this date period.
Yeah, I actually kind of recommend this language, that despite what Ed's saying respectfully, because I just think that Mass Housing has endorsed the project, and I think that they need to continue to endorse the project.
I like it.
yeah, I think I'm 100% behind it. This is a little bit more than what Ed's saying, and I think it's good.
I'm gonna argue on this one.
Okay.
And I'm gonna come back to the reasonableness. We don't wanna put extraneous stuff in here. I think the practice is clear, because I know I've done this. Once you submit the comprehensive permit application, you're set. The way Mass Housing makes sure that it can continue to endorse the project comes at the final approval stage. Once a comprehensive permit is issued, once it gets through the appeal process, if there's an appeal, an applicant has to submit a final approval application. Part of that is to explain any and all changes that have occurred during the public hearing. You also have to submit a financial commitment, a firm financial commitment, an affirmative fair housing plan, and some other stuff. Because Mass Housing understands that changes are made during a public hearing. That's the purpose of a public hearing. They need to be able to make the same 7 findings that they made in issuing a project eligibility letter. if they see something that's been revised that would cause them to rescind a project eligibility letter, for example, a change in sponsorship, or a increase in the number of units, they will not issue final approval. Without final approval, you can't get a building permit. So you're covered, and what I don't wanna do, I wanna make sure, because I think they can do a perfectly reasonable project here, consistent with what you're talking about. That's what we wanna be able to say. Same with number one. You can't, to require, George, a regulatory agreement executed, well, an applicant can submit it, can execute a regulatory agreement, but the only other party to the regulatory agreement is Mass Housing. Mass Housing will not execute a regulatory agreement until it's ready to give final approval. So it's not gonna happen in this time frame. And the issue of limited dividend status has been litigated at HAC. The understanding is, as long as you're willing to enter into this regulatory agreement, you're okay. So I would not put that in there, Judge. There's a well-known law firm that has tried to make this argument numerous times and lost. So they just have to be, they just have to be a limited dividend organization. And once they sign that regulatory agreement, they'll do that. They can't begin construction until they have final approval. That means they will have signed that regulatory agreement. Again, I don't want to make it look like we're choosing picky things that aren't going to stand up.
All right, either George, you can come back, or with, do you want to say something about it, or do you want us to consider it? Do we
Just let them
want,
do some research.
do we want to think about
You
it?
guys have to.
I have researched it. I mean, there's things
sure.
that, you know, this also came up during the hearing. There are things that you're unlikely to prevail on at the HAC level that haven't necessarily been ruled on an appellate level. And I've been one of the few people that have tried some of these issues on an appellate level, all the way to the state's highest court. And I feel that when you have a good faith argument or something, on something, you raise it. And I don't put in extraneous language. To me, I think it's a reasonable requirement. I don't think that it provides, if the developer were not to appeal other aspects of your decision, I don't think that they would, you know, file an appeal of this particular
Based on that, yeah.
Requirement. So, you know, I mean, we can.
George, they can't execute.
With the 30-day thing?
They can't do it in 30 days. It takes 60 days for map, if you're lucky, and this is a complicated project, 60 days to get a final approval. And I keep saying, I've always advised boards, focus on the real issues. This is not a real issue.
I see George's point, though, but it's beyond my pay scale, so.
We can have Ed give you a red line comments on things that he wants to have straight
Yeah.
from, and then you can make the decision.
Yeah, I think we come back to this.
Remember, I'm not, we don't, you know, town council is not George Pucci. I don't come to this with just my own experience on 40B. We have a
Yeah.
40B team at town council's office, and we have certain conditions that we recommend that we think are in good faith and that are litigatable if we need to. And so that's where some of these conditions come up.
Yeah, I see your point, Ed, but I don't really see these as, you know, completely unreasonable, as opposed to us saying, you know, we'd only like to see 4 units on the overall. That would be completely unreasonable. So, just in the interest of time,
I think
can
it
you?
would make more sense
can-
for Ed and me to debate.
This is what I was going to say. Can you guys talk about some of that stuff?
Yeah.
Is that okay with everybody?
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So the site control, you know, they have to comply with that. That makes sense. So on general conditions, again, for lack of, I'm not going to call it boilerplate. These are all at 4, 5, 6, 7, I had no notes on any of those. Did anybody want to discuss?
7 just reiterates that point about, conditions shown on the plan that aren't specifically granted or excluded.
Right.
So the only comment I have on 7 is, does this relate to, Ed, what you said, we have a defined term and we refer to that defined term, so we know what we're referring to?
On 5, George, and we can talk about this. With DACD under a LIP program, the town is a party to the regulatory agreement. With mass housing, the town is not a party to the regulatory agreement. It acknowledges it, but it's not a party to it.
All right, you guys, again, that's beyond at least my pay scale, so you guys can,
Debate.
red line would be great if there's still a question, a red line, or ultimately, we agreed on that. Boom, okay.
Ed can provide me with his red line.
Yeah,
and if we
perfect.
decide to just, we'll have that in the second draft.
Perfect. Number 8. Basically, if I'm looking at it, just says you want to make substantial changes, you got to come back to get written approval from the board.
I'll talk to George about this one too. I would delete the first sentence and just have the second sentence in there. The problem is you're sort of defining you might have someone lead to an argument that says, here's what you said was substantive, and we did something else. So I think by just citing the reg that provides what has to be done if there's a change, I think that would be adequate, unless you want to. I don't see any reason to.
Yeah, that I don't have a problem with.
Yeah,
I agree.
that makes sense to me. You just
Yeah.
the broad.
Because
reg,
it basically says in the second sentence that if you've changed anything, you have to come back.
Right,
Right, that's what you want.
okay. Okay, the next sentence, number 9, next paragraph, I'm sorry, is there are several spots where it gives the board 45 days
Yeah,
to review something.
doesn't seem like enough.
We only meet once a month, so you literally, it's, how does that work? Is that adequate for us? Is that normal? Is there I'm trying to be reasonable and not overburden the applicant, but by the same token, almost anything that comes to us, I'm guessing would need more than sort of,
To get a written decision, certainly, right?
yeah, and it just seems like a short period of time, given we only meet once a month. And with the, it comes up later, it comes up in several spots, so we should consider that.
Could we do 60 days?
Is 60 days reasonable? What's your experience?
I would hold that in abeyance
Okay.
until we take a look at the additional.
Yeah, okay, it just was a thought that
If it's a change, remember, once it's a change,
then they gotta go
there's
through
a
the,
time schedule for that.
I understand that. It was more, there are a number of spots where we shall review and maybe, and provide some sort of response. Now, I guess the response could easily be, you have to come before us to a full-blown meeting, but
Which is,
anyway,
we definitely have done
let's
that.
look at
Yeah.
the timeframes.
So I view this as an important condition, but maybe I'm wrong. Because of the fact that we don't have a final set of plans, and there's a lot of things that we're leaving for post-comprehensive permit issuance, and maybe we have addressed them later on. Considering that we have so many things up in the air, I would think we would want more time.
Well,
this.
that's where I was going, and
And the other thing, my other comment on this, and George, maybe it doesn't need to be spelled out, but the if-thens, and I've had a problem wrapping my arms around this whole post issuance, what if we don't approve it? What, you know,
No, that was in my list too.
if the board doesn't, fails to approve that, I don't know what then, and maybe this is unprecedented. I don't know, but it would,
A good example, let's try to focus on what an additional requirement would be. I would say an updated, a phasing and construction management plan, or a plan that says how are you gonna protect residents who are living there during the course of construction, which, as I mentioned before, you discussed in great detail for Seychelles. That's the type of thing that has to be submitted after the permit is issued.
right, the normal stuff. But what about a site plan? We're given the option to do a number of different unit combinations.
Well, that's gonna be that one's tricky here, because normally you approve a site plan. Here, we're trying to be reasonable, we're trying to be flexible. So, you do want time. What sometimes protect boards here is the board can make a determination that the information submitted is not adequate. There's no such language here, because very often a developer will submit something and doesn't have enough information. So you say, look, here's what's missing, come back. That's when the clock will start. So I think we've just got to go, as we
Yeah.
go through this, we want to look
Okay.
at subsequent information that's necessary. And going to 60 days might not be unreasonable.
Okay. And/or if you insert some language to the effect that we don't have to
Whether it
approve,
complies or whether certain additional information is needed.
something like that.
Question, if I may?
Yep.
So if they submit plans for a document, we have a hearing every 30 days. Typically, I wouldn't have to put this in the paper for legal ad, it would be on the agenda under other or old business or something. Right?
Yes,
For them to discuss and approve, review, whatever. It wouldn't be a hearing necessarily because they're not opening the hearing. It would be
Right.
just, we've done this with Sachem's to
Yeah.
decide whether something's, for instance,
More substantial.
or insubstantial.
Right.
Yeah.
So those are not hearings that just
But,
go on the
but I'm distinguishing this. You're gonna have certain submission requirements as a condition.
Right.
That's different from a request for a modification.
Right, but they would still potentially discuss it in a meeting,
Yes.
the regular monthly meeting.
Okay, we can't, we're only on, page
know.
6, so we gotta keep moving. So that needs a little more fleshing out. Okay, so site-specific conditions, number 10. Frontage of less than 50 feet is depicted on the comprehensive plan is permitted on lots 16, 20, 21, 31, 32, 30.
Yeah, it should only be 16 and 41.
Yeah, that's what
That's what I had.
right. So it's only 16 and 41.
20, 21, 31, and 32,
We did not,
we did not allow.
okay? We also talked, I thought about, or did we talk about the 5 bedrooms being wider? Those lots being wider or just
Yes.
bigger?
But that shows up someplace else, I thought,
Okay.
maybe. 60 square feet of frontage,
Yeah,
did
I
we
think
say
we
that?
said 60 square.
I thought we had settled on 60 square feet of frontage for the 5-bedroom lots. I don't remember it in there elsewhere, but,
I can look.
no, you don't have to look at it, I don't remember it in here,
Oh.
but maybe it was elsewhere. Okay, 11, no spas. We all agreed on that.
You might want to beat that up. I think you have raised concerns about other reasons why this fire. One, it's a violation of the sort of being able to distinguish an affordable from market from the curb. Also, you mentioned noise, given the narrowness of the lots.
Noise, it's more impervious surface. It's more maintenance. You get a maintenance truck there every, it again is a health and safety issue for the neighbors. And again, if you're making, I guess you could make the argument either way on the economics.
I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead.
I'm just going to go back to that frontage. I don't have any notes about the 5-bedroom units having to be, I just have a square footage calculation, not that we needed more frontage.
Okay, maybe we,
I only had,
maybe,
you can add it, but I only had that on the lot size.
okay.
I'm
Yeah.
not sure that it makes any sense to require more frontage for a 5-bedroom unit, just
Okay, just you gotta have
I
a
think
slightly
we did
bigger
one-
lot.
need a bigger lot,
I think we
that's
said,
fine.
I
That's
think you guys are
totally
right. I think we said the lot size was bigger and then because the lot size was gonna be
Yeah.
bigger.
Well, because we said that the 50-foot frontage is, comparable to the smallest zoning district on the island.
I know,
It
but
would be consistent with that because it's still a single-family dwelling. The lot size would be larger.
I hear you, but the flip side of that argument, this is a 2-acre zone. It's a rural area, and we don't have to go to the lowest common
Yeah,
denominator.
I just don't have it in my notes. I mean, I'm happy to
That's fine.
discuss it.
You said 6,250 square feet for 5-bedroom houses.
Yeah, no, we
Square
know
footage.
that.
We're talking about frontage.
Yeah.
Did we say anything on
But I
frontage?
don't have any.
I don't, my only point is you're losing, so because of the nature of the project.
You're gonna get
the
more
nature of the
frontage.
road layout, you're gonna lose some lots because of the, because of the 50-foot requirement.
Yeah.
And I think you're just gonna lose additional lots potentially, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but at the same time,
Okay.
to make this thing.
I think we
I'm,
did, so the frontage that we did change for the duplex.
That's right, to
and
70
fourplex.
feet, yep.
70 and 75 feet for the
Right.
fourplex.
That's why I don't,
all right, let me ask Ed and George a question. I mean, if we're going to, or how does everyone feel? Should we just keep it consistent and not give it on lots 16 and 41, just so no one can make an argument? Oh, well, you gave it on those 2 lots, why can't you do it
Well,
elsewhere?
isn't one of those the pork chop lot?
yeah, one was a pork chop that made sense because the zoning bylaw allows it.
Okay,
And then the other one was at the end of that one cul-de-sac.
which is gonna come up later in the fire chief discussion.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
The permitted per lot ground coverage requirements for all lots shall be, I thought I thought we were going to basically, I thought we had gotten to that issue by simply saying the plans are the plans are the
Well,
plans.
what we had talked about and was us doing like a ground coverage, my office was going to do a ground coverage calculation for each building type as submitted, just so that we knew.
Right, of what the building is, but not on a percentage
That's right.
basis.
So I think there'll be a chart insert. I mean, I have the info now.
Okay,
I didn't have it. I mean, they just did it, so.
okay.
So
All
it will
right,
be
so
like
that's a fill-in, which obviously is the blank
Maybe I'll
line.
forward this to you and you can create a chart?
Yeah,
The
give me
square,
the parameters that you want.
yeah, okay.
So we're just not state,
That works for the single-family lots and the duplex lots.
Well, it works for, we did it for the rec building, we already established the square footage.
Right.
And then for the barn, we also did it, and he did it for sheds, I don't, which is.
well,
immaterial, but-
Ed's asking about the fourplex,
Yeah, we're
which
doing
is
it for that too.
based on the,
The plans are submitted.
yeah, based on the plans submitted, the fourplex cannot be bigger than X.
Oh, that's right. That'll work for that.
For the
okay?
ground
For the
coverage.
ground cover.
We're not talking about total
We're
square
not
footage of the
gonna,
building.
we're not gonna state it as a percentage. That's too
Right, but
complicated.
what we don't know about the fourplexes, how many you're gonna end up with.
We think
Well,
7,
if 7,
Okay, so that's the only distinction.
yeah.
yeah.
And it might not be 7, it might be 6, it might
Yeah.
be, who knows? Okay, so 13, again, I think we all agree that buildings A, B, C, D are out of character for the existing surroundings, impermissibly contribute to overburdening the site and surrounding areas. I also think there should be language in that part that mentions that there are full units in the basements, and that's impermissible
In one of the models.
in one of the models. I don't know,
I don't know if they gain your
yeah.
B and C. The fourplexes do have basement.
They have basement
Bedrooms.
bedrooms.
Right, and that's,
They do not,
Yeah.
so, I don't have it right in front of me, but I could look it up, but I believe on A, B, C, D, 2 of those buildings have basement completely.
that was the one, that was the
complete
one that
unit.
was a half a level up.
Right.
They had
So
garden.
that's impermissible, and again, that's not an inconsistent thought that's come up at the deliberations. That's part of the record, that we were
Well, and
against
we
that
also,
from the
Tucker had
get-go.
made that note that none of the other projects
No,
have basement units, so
None of the other projects have basement bedrooms, I don't believe.
You
Right.
just have to be careful distinguishing between certain rooms in a basement, which the 4-unit buildings will have,
Right.
versus units that are entirely.
That's right. That's why I made the note at 14. I
We're
thought,
eliminating those.
right.
None of the 4-unit buildings, the issue with the 4-unit buildings, I believe, is that the 3-bedroom had 2-bedroom units, but you discussed that, and you said as long as there's 1 bedroom above grade,
Right.
that's okay.
Right.
I mean, is that our thought, or do we could go say no bedrooms
I
in the
just don't
basement,
think because
period?
single family, I mean, people have basement bedrooms in houses.
They don't,
I know
they
that
generally
this is-
comply with zoning,
Well, that's true.
so, I mean, I'm not trying to open up the can, but,
Well, I think on number 14, it should definitely, this was confusing to me. I thought it should say no basement units, no
Yeah, that
units
was confusing.
completely in the basement will be permitted in any building.
yeah, I had slightly different language.
But
No,
whatever,
no basement units in entirety
yeah.
allowed, or, yeah, that has to be
The legal
fleshed
term is,
out.
we just want to make sure that that's clear.
So where are you landing on this one?
Yeah, where are we landing on? We're landing on basement bedrooms. We're gonna allow them?
Well, I think they exist in Rugged Scott and didn't.
Legally?
No, they don't.
Oh, maybe not legally. They are there.
So illegally, they
And
We're
then,
generally talking about legally.
and then didn't we allow some guy at
No.
Sachem's Path to,
No, bathroom.
he let us do that?
We allowed them to put bathrooms in the basement.
Now, is this for, are we talking about multi-unit, the multi-unit things or all basements? I mean, I think you could, have,
Changes the tenor of the development quite a bit. I mean,
Can you say it again?
would it just be for the multi-unit buildings or the duplexes and the fourplexes or all houses as well?
the duplexes do not have any basement bedrooms.
I mean, I think we've been consistent about not having basements in single-family dwellings,
Basement bedrooms?
basement bedrooms. Sorry, I'm tripping over my words.
No, you're not. We have been, and then it's seemingly we backed off that position here, but I believe the other,
I mean, I think we did back off it maybe because of the shock and awe thing.
I viewed it as a compromise where they wanted entire units in the basement, and then
Right.
I don't
We
love,
had quite a bit of commentary on the record too about no basement bedrooms,
I know,
so,
this isn't a new thought.
no.
no.
It's, we also have had quite a bit of commentary on the record about no 5-bedroom units.
Right, things that I have in this draft were based on your last delivery.
No, I know.
No, I know.
I know.
Saying we were gonna distinguish, but you're still, again, this is just
A draft.
discussion purposes, you're still free to say, you know what? We don't wanna allow bedroom units, basement bedrooms.
Because we've been consistent in other projects that we've done where we haven't allowed them,
Yeah.
I'm more okay.
given its density.
I'm more willing to accept the 5-bedroom units, but not basement bedrooms.
But aren't those 5-bedroom units?
Two of them are in the basement.
Well, then they don't, I mean, yeah, then I guess.
Just saying.
they
I mean, the
don't
only, well, I guess my only, the flip side of this is allowing them to put some of that program in the basement makes the visual architecture smaller. So I don't want to say you can have a 5-bedroom house and then you can't have any of them in the basement, and the buildings get big.
Well, not really, because you would just simply say 30% ground cover ratio, and they're bumping up on some of those numbers. They're like at 27 or 26 or 24
But do they have to have two?
now on a 5,000 square foot lot. So, yeah,
I'd have to look at the chart and,
yeah, we'd have to go over that. But
Yeah.
I'm saying that just because you're saying it can't be in the basement doesn't mean you can just throw 2 bedrooms and a bathroom.
I mean, just looking at these
above ground
numbers,
on
a lot of them are only 1,000 square feet on the ground.
Yeah,
They're minimum of 5,000 square foot lots. That's another 500 square feet they can put on the ground and build a second floor on top of it. And I mean, that's my rationale for allowing basement bedrooms in the single-family houses.
Reasonable.
And it looks like building type A is 1383, so that's pushing the 1500.
Yeah, you're not
That's a
getting,
5-bedroom, then they have 6250 times 30%, you're getting to 1800 square feet of ground coverage, 18 and change. I don't know. I'd rather have the buildings appear smaller from the exterior for the single-family units, but, I mean, because you can't.
again, I mean, unfortunately, in a reasonable discussion, this might have come out, but we never, I mean, with the applicant, because, yeah, there's a push and a pull here.
I haven't studied the plans enough to really the architectural plans in a while to understand, you know, do they have a house that's 4 bedrooms above grade and with an additional 5th bedroom in the basement? Or you're saying that the 5 bedrooms?
One of the 5, I think, one of the, we'll get to it, but,
Should we go back, should we discuss this after we've been able to go through the plans in
Sure.
more detail maybe?
Okay,
okay.
so 13, or 14.
15, because 14 is
14 and
no-
15, we're going to come back to with it. No,
No, 14 is a given.
14's a given, no.
Right.
Wordsmithing, you didn't, you passed over 13 was the bigger issue is, are you eliminating the 8-building,
Yes.
Yes,
We are.
8-unit building,
8 unit
eliminating?
buildings are gone.
yes.
Eliminating them as a building type, yes. And again, George, if
You're not reducing them to 4plexes.
well, in essence, we're reducing, there are 2 4-plexes on the plan now and 4 8-plexes. So that's,
32 plus,
well, that's six buildings, if you want to say that. We're actually increasing the number of buildings. We said 7 seemed reasonable. 7 4-plexes. So yes, we're replacing them in essence.
We're
Yeah,
going for
They will come up
an
with that unit count that George is looking for.
yeah, as we
Yeah.
keep talking about it.
yeah, definitely.
It's not like you can just sort of cut it in half, George. These are complicated,
Right.
unnecessarily complicated units. The board is saying, we're gonna go with a product type we know, which is a 4-unit building.
Yeah, I think it's cleaner to say we eliminate the 8,
Right.
and the 4 can be up to 7
Building.
buildings of the 4, right?
Allowing up to 7 4plexes?
That's where we were last time. Okay.
On page 7.
Page 7,
I just thought that we should define the ground coverage as defined by the zoning bylaw, or is that a given?
where are you?
Recreational building is limited
Oh,
to
yeah.
1,500 square feet of ground, it says 1,500 square feet ground level, and I thought it should say ground coverage as defined by the zoning bylaw.
Yeah, that works for me. You're concerned about, there might be some confusion about porches, et cetera, or something?
Or, I don't know.
Yeah,
It
no,
seems
that's
like
fine.
it- We, based on our local zoning bylaw, we all have an understanding of.
I think that's totally fair. So, do you get that, George?
No.
Okay, will you repeat that?
As defined by the zoning bylaw.
So you had written ground level, 1,500 square feet ground level.
Yep.
And I thought it should say 1,500 square feet of ground coverage as defined by the zoning bylaw.
But George was speaking about another thing, which we were speaking about too, that you can only have 1,500 square feet in the basement, which, because you have
Right, 'cause, yeah.
1,500
so
above.
we're
You can't have it like tunneled and all of a sudden it's 4,000 square feet subterranean. It's 1,500 square feet of usable space. I think
I
they're
know what
two
you mean.
different points.
Yeah.
So I think you get the 1,500 square feet ground coverage as it's defined by the zoning bylaw, and
Then the total
period.
square
and-
foot, usable square, or
Yeah,
total
and-
square footage of the building is 4,000 square feet as broken up in this manner.
Right.
That makes sense.
And I would just wordsmith the reduction in the size of the recreational building footprint shall be used as green space.
Okay.
Do we
Okay.
know what that reduction is, the square footage reduction? Do we
we
want to
had come
put
up
that?
with-
They didn't provide us with a plan that had,
Oh, so
dimensions.
it's
I
footage.
scaled it off, and it was,
4,000 on the ground.
it was more than 4,000. It
Okay,
was
so
like
that's-
4,700. I mean, I could do it again.
No, no, don't. It's why just it's better this way. It's more clear. I was just thinking if they had provided us with a number, but you're right, they haven't.
No.
I mean, again, and you could put that in there, George, that the recreational building, such as it was, I don't think it's necessary, but maybe somewhere in your narrative, in our narrative, about information that wasn't provided to us. The recreation building was never really, it was discussed at a meeting, and we said we didn't like it at all. It was too big. Yet it came back, and
In the same form.
in the same form, and it really wasn't, it was somewhat undefined in terms of size and whatnot. I think I scaled it,
Yeah, we all did off the site plan and came up with a
yeah.
rough. Yeah.
It was huge.
I definitely think we want to limit things like no catering, limited use by project residents and guests only, no outside use of or rentals. Again, somewhere in the narrative, I think we want to comment about the inappropriate size of the original design,
Can we say compared to other?
compared to anything.
Well, I mean, just compared to anything, but also I went and pulled the
Oh, yeah, great
the
point.
thing
I had
for Noshop, Nashawquisset.
Yeah.
Sagem's Path doesn't have one, but Rugged Scott and what's the other one that has a little?
Abrams Quarry.
Parks.
No, not Ames Quarry. Park Circle. And they're
Yeah.
tiny.
Yeah, no, I had that
They're
noted.
all
It's a
those-
great idea.
Some 40B and some regular, but they're all comparable to what we've put here.
They're probably much smaller than what we've put in here. So again, I think from a reasonableness standpoint, we've been very reasonable.
But I mean, is that something that we want to include in the narrative that
Yeah.
because of lack of information from the applicant, we went and looked at what else exists on the ground in Nantucket and
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
It's also relevant though, not treating this differently. than-
yeah,
Yeah.
right. That's why when I went and I looked at
Yeah.
what ones that aren't.
Be helpful to, very helpful to the drafter, like specific issues like that, if you could
I'll give
forward
it-
them over to
yeah.
Eleanor and
Okay.
then she,
So it was Noshop,
Noshop, Nashawquisset, Park Circle, what's
Rugged Scott.
Rugged Scott, and then what did I say? Noshop, Nashawquisset. I
Yeah,
don't know.
those
I
three.
printed them out. They're in my bag. I'll just give them to Eleanor.
you can forward them to Eleanor, because then sometimes I talk to Eleanor to get
Yeah,
Yeah.
more background on
Totally.
certain.
perfect.
Well, then you don't have to look them up. I'll just give you what I found, Eleanor.
Okay, the pool hours we talked about seem reasonable.
Yeah, well,
Go ahead, Jim.
this isn't a big issue, but I have a problem with putting this type of rule in there. I don't, as a matter of consistency, why not the homeowners association establish this rule? I mean, we're telling them when they can use the pool, us five.
Well, I think it's for noise and light and other
But what
things
if-
like
what
that
if-
for the rest of the.
What if they determine that they want to go swimming at 7? They got to come to us to
Well,
change that
dusk is
rule.
later than 7.
You mean 7 in the morning.
Oh,
I don't know. That's just a issue. Let the homeowners decide. They're buying these.
Well, I will comment on that a little bit, Jim. Pools are noisy. Now, this one may not be, but they can be very noisy. The neighbors are going, and I'm not just talking
neighbors-
for the development. I'm talking about the neighbors will notice this pool if it's well used. Marco Polo,
all day. That's
all
year,
day.
Well, no, that's a good
Sunday,
example. Do we
every-
say no
every
Marco
Sunday.
Polo? In the pool? I mean, I just think the homeowners association is a regime where they create their rules the way they want.
Well, but-
I'm not suggesting that they're not going to keep these rules, but let them.
Yeah, but what I'm suggesting is that the homeowners may have a different
Threshold for,
threshold for pain than the neighbors.
And this is my other issue with this, is that this isn't a 30-year restriction, right? This will be forever. So anything that gets changed will need to come before us.
Well, we're not going to get everything 100% right, and if they have to come back and say you guys, made a mistake on the pool, and the neighbors think it's great, and
Okay. and we know what dusk is, I guess.
I mean, I think,
Nobody's gonna enforce this until a neighbor complains.
Right.
I know, but that goes along with,
dusk is a
You can live in a
defined
basement
term
unless
on any
someone-
given day,
someone turns.
right?
Sure it is, absolutely.
Yeah.
And then the question is, what other rules do we want to set in stone here?
Well, I think
To
the
how people
pool,
live.
I think the pool is, we're only setting a rule because of the noise factor. If it were an indoor pool, totally enclosed, I wouldn't care what time people are swimming in there if I were a neighbor.
Okay.
But it's a noise factor.
It's not a big deal with me. And then the second part of this, so we specifically address the American Disabilities Act with respect to the pool by being silent in other areas. I mean, I know what the answer is. They have to comply with it. And maybe this is just superfluous.
Yeah.
But I mean, I guess.
think you raised this because it came up on one of your other projects,
Yeah.
and it's just being reasonable and reminding them.
Yeah,
My
yeah.
concern is if you're silent on other things, that they use that as an argument. Even it would be difficult, but
The other thing, Jim, in terms of, with the advent of Airbnb and the fact you've got these units that you know are gonna be rented, having some rules like this give you a safeguard, if in fact problems develop.
It's just
not
that-
unlike a developer. I was amazed. They said, you've got to carpet your unit in a multifamily building to avoid sound transmission. I asked, do you really enforce that? They said, no, but if someone's complaining below somebody, we make that resident put in a carpet.
yeah, I mean, that's.
Yeah, I don't think we need to get into that, but the developers should.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
I mean, that's the same argument of we won't allow bedrooms in a basement.
No, I mean,
But if someone complains about it, or
no, I disagree completely on the bedrooms in the basement. The bedrooms in the basement are a direct correlation to the density of the development.
no, I'm just saying as an example. I'm not arguing that we shouldn't do that. I'm just saying.
Okay.
My concern is that you have a general catch-all for federal law, but in this case you don't. What happens if there's a specific federal law that we didn't
No, it
address?
No.
That's all.
apply the code.
Well,
It's in here later on.
I thought it was in there later on that you still have to comply with building code, which the implication is if there's, in other words, there's no 40B law that we're ignoring that says there's a certain percentage of the units do not have to be accessible, correct?
You can't grant relief from any building code requirement or ADA requirement.
right, but this was.
But we don't have to impose a greater requirement. We could, I suppose, but,
This is just saying that they have to just make their pool handicap accessible.
right.
Right.
It's fine.
Which probably is required.
Yeah.
Just a gentle reminder. Let's,
So 18, are we on to 18?
yeah, proportionate, go ahead, Lisa.
Well, I was just going to say the 6,000 should be 6,250.
Yeah.
The 5-bedroom dwelling unit must be on a lot containing a minimum of 6,250 square feet in lot size. It must
Okay.
contain a minimum of 3 parking spaces.
Yeah, okay. So I had a note right there about setbacks, front and frontage. We're going to deal with that in Appendix C and the waivers? Or do we want to?
I think also we need to structure this in a way to maybe make it a little bit clearer to follow, like the different requirements for each. Because here, the next one is on the duplexes. And then we need to have maybe another condition for the fourplexes.
I
mean, maybe
agree.
it should be
I agree.
spelled out a little
Well,
bit.
there should be 19, and then
or-
a new 20, which would be the fourplex.
Right.
So we're listing each housing type. Well, let me go back. On 18 would be
Should be all,
the proportionate thing. That's for everything. And then on where it goes any 5-bedroom dwellings, that should be a new number, I think, where we're getting into size of the lot.
Yeah, yeah.
So that would be 19. 20 would be duplex. Then, there may be a for duplex, then they may combine units to create 4-bedroom units. I think,
No, there's this,
I think, I think 20 and then 21 would be there. We get into the fourplexes.
right, and then you saw that the with 1,250 square feet of open space per bedroom under the duplex is wrong.
Yeah, there was some,
That's confusion.
it's not open space per bedroom.
That's how we determine the size of the
Lot
lot
size.
for the duplexes, so that, I think, just gets stricken.
Yeah, you don't need that.
Where are you? Oh, in-
What was 19, duplex units must be a minimum of 7,500 square feet lot size, including,
Yeah, I think the breakdown would be better, as you're saying.
Yeah, we'll just break that down in the
Together
chart.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Conditions to all units, conditions unit by unit.
Yeah,
yeah, frontage,
Unit type by unit type.
right, okay.
okay.
It got a little confusing.
It must be a minimum of 70 feet.
Yeah, definitely. And then there was an error, I thought, on the fourplex units, minimum of 8750 with 4 parking spaces per lot. That was, no, I thought it was 7 parking spaces dedicated to the fourplex, because they're 7 bedrooms.
What number are you on?
Well, it was 20,
Part of 20,
the last sentence.
yeah, 7 parking for fourplex
It's
is
the
what I
new
have.
20.
I do too.
It goes, 4-unit building shall contain a minimum of 8750 square feet of lot size, and your, says with 4 parking spaces per lot. That should be 7.
And what's the number of parking spaces for the duplexes?
4.
4.
Because those are both 2 bedrooms. Okay,
Yeah, so it's
No,
4.
they're 3 bedrooms, but he said the town bylaw.
That's the town
Okay.
bylaw.
required only
including 4
three
parking
Right,
spaces.
4 parking spaces.
For duplex
lot.
and 7 for a.
And those are exclusive of roadway and any ancillary parking.
Right, which, by the way, I don't think we've ever addressed the ancillary parking, the overflow parking. I think at some point we should count it and say that's the minimum, if
Well,
we agree.
I had notes that they're actually providing more parking than is required by the zoning bylaw.
Yeah.
On their
I know, but we just want to, all I'm saying is, since we don't have a definitive plan within reason, we just want to memorialize the number.
Number of
Additional
parking.
in addition to
Absolutely.
what is required by our unit.
And they've done that, but I think what you're saying is they have it counted out on the plan.
Yeah, so we just have to count it and,
223 parking spaces will be provided on the
right,
site.
just in case the plan changes,
Changes.
we're saying that this is a minimum per blah, blah,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, so parking, we have to,
I would suggest, if we could,
go ahead.
in addition to the narrative, or in place of the narrative, do a table that has unit type, minimum frontage, minimum
Yeah.
lot size, required number of parking spaces.
I like the table.
That would be much easier.
Must be clear.
Agreed.
Also,
And-
did you say you thought the duplexes required 2 spaces?
Is it 3?
It's 1 per bedroom.
Yeah, it's 3. So that's another good point. The duplexes need 3,
6 per duplex, basically.
six spaces per duplex.
Oh,
So what,
that's
on the
different than
fourplexes, then that doesn't seem.
Then they need 7 because they have
6 for a
7.
duplex and 7
Well,
for a
that's-
fourplex?
Yeah, because there's 7 bedrooms in the fourplex, there's 6 in the duplex.
Could we
So
just say that,
you basically get, it's 1 per bedroom
yeah,
So the duplex.
on the
needs- The
multifamily
duplex needs
units.
how many parking spaces on that?
6
6 for a duplex.
and 7 for a
fourplex.
fourplex.
All right?
Could I come back to 18, and actually Jim's point? We single out the single-family homes having a proportionate distribution of bedrooms.
Yeah, we need,
That should apply to all building types.
yes.
Or just add it in the table for each one?
Yeah, the table could,
A table would, and it's not just, maybe we pick this up later.
Yeah, I think we do pick it up later.
It's distribution of unit types, 5 bedrooms between affordable and market.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think you
Because
covered
the
that,
other-
George, didn't you, later?
Yeah.
And
The
the,
duplexes are fine in the,
right,
in the 4-unit building, they said they would do that. It's just the single families.
This one more to Ed's point about them not having 5 bedrooms for affordable.
Right.
They're not having any affordable 5 bedrooms. That's
Well, if we come down, I think at a minimum, if we come down on 5 bedrooms being allowed, I'm not saying we are, they definitely have to provide 25% of those for affordable.
Right,
Yeah.
Otherwise,
Right.
it's a disproportionate
right.
situation.
I mean, that's what 18 went to as a.
Yeah, I got you,
But it probably has to be worded more clearly if.
definitely.
Because that's what I meant by that.
Yeah,
But
I think it needs to be a little more clear on
I
that
don't
one.
understand it, certainly. That's-
And just back to the parking, I think it would make sense somewhere in the narrative or in this to make the point that we're basing the 1 parking space per bedroom on a reasonable zone on the island, which is what we're using as the model for the, certainly for the setbacks. Was that also for the ground coverage? Is R5 5,000 square feet?
Yeah, my problem with citing the one, well, that's neither here, never mind. Yeah. Okay, so then we get into gutters. I think we can discuss that a little bit in the HDC discussion if we ever get to it, because we can just note where gutters are necessary. The fact that it says all roof water drainage must be directed to subsurface drainage basically indicates you have to have gutters and downspouts on every roof plane, which is good, but I think we want to be very specific about that. They just can't have generic gutters. They have to be, every roof plane has to be guttered and downspouted to the subsurface drainage system. 25-foot undisturbed buffer.
Can
Aug-
20 can
go ahead.
21 and 22 be combined?
I think they can.
Because I think you want to have the 22,
Same
you want to
planting
have,
idea there?
and you also want to delineate it by the split rail fence.
Sure.
Installed on the inner edge of the buffer.
Yeah,
I did see in one of the other decisions, and I'd had to look for it quickly, there was a methodology about, because we got a little stuck on this last time, about the spacing of trees. I think it was 10 feet.
you mean in the buffer
We
zone?
couldn't find it at the,
Right.
when we were there. Yeah.
So there was some language in one of them.
Okay,
So we might want to insert something in there. So there's some idea of that of the augmentation.
right.
The augmentation has to be defined a little bit more.
Yes.
And who is that our representative? We want that kind of language in there. I'll find that before we finish. No additional parking or expansion. Seems fine to me. No conversion of living spaces, et cetera. No customary home occupation. Seems good. Traffic for all the normal reasons. Boats, no. Recreation, commercial vehicles. The only thing on the commercial vehicles is, and there's language again in some of these other.
I think it's in the Satan's Path, we dealt with it.
Yeah, you should be able to have I mean, my truck is probably got a commercial plate.
I think what we don't want is,
There's language in one of those other ones about, pickups are allowed, but,
but not 5 pickups. You can have like I think it was that if it was used for your personal.
Talking about home occupation probably, right?
no, I think if I use my truck for both, work.
No, what I'm
and-
saying is like if you also had like 5 guys that work for you and you have 5 work trucks.
Oh, no, no,
those
no,
can't
no.
be on
I got you.
premises. If you have
Yeah,
you have a
you get-
Personal
Volvo
vid-
and you drive a Saab on the weekends, but you have a work truck to take to job sites, I think that's
Got you,
a story.
yeah.
I didn't realize you jumped ahead.
Where were you? Where do you want to go back to?
boats?
20, the boats. On 20, the approved maintenance plan, is that something that we're going to approve before construction? Is that something that we want to make clear on that? And what is the maintenance plan? I don't even know.
Well, the maintenance plan is critical to the
Oh.
performance, and I asked Ed Pesci this last time when he was here about Sachem's, which has this same system. So it's a critical part of it, the approved maintenance plan. I mean,
Do we have a maintenance plan at this?
Is it,
no.
An O&M plan is a condition in every comprehensive permit that we're on.
That's what it is?
Storm drainage or.
prior to
sewer
construction?
pumps.
Prior to any construction, or is this a
Prior to any
post-construction?
building.
Yeah, and that's in here,
Okay.
And
I
that should
thought.
get, and that'll get tied into the drainage products. I mean, they
Okay.
all have.
I just wanted to make
best
sure
management practices
that was
associated
clear.
with the product that they're gonna buy.
Definitely, but there should definitely be a plan that a neighbor or the town
Gotcha.
engineer or somebody can refer to and say, yes, you're doing this, no, you're not doing it.
And on 21, the list of approved plantings were, I know you asked me to
I did.
provide a list. I have a list.
You have it?
Well, what I think we should do is there's landscaping with native plants that's put forth by the Conservation Foundation, and
Okay.
that we just reference it. It's either a
Can I
website or a
ask you,
document.
are any of these buffer plantings on that list?
I'm sure they are. I didn't go through them in detail, but, and there's also, the state puts out a list, but this is a lot more specific to Nantucket. But one thing I found out, Ed, the state does define native plants
I'm
to
sure
a
they do.
specific year.
They're the ones
I
who-
didn't know this, but
I know, but that's all I'm saying is that
post-glacial.
well, it's definitely
Definitely
post-glacial.
He just
post-glacial.
remembers
I
that time fondly, so.
don't-
You're also young. You don't remember the glacier.
when Nantucket Sound was land.
Oh, you're a funny woman, Susan.
Can you provide that down?
Amazing, you walked right
yeah.
into it.
Okay.
In compliance with,
But can you give her like a link so I can reference it?
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, we talked about the pickups. No change to the homeowners association if it changes the permit. I think that's fair. You okay with that, Jim?
Yeah, I guess, yeah.
The next part of 27, any future proposed changes to exterior architectural elements, features, subject to HTC. I thought we had basically said elsewhere there were no changes were allowed.
I still think it's good to have that in there. Like fences,
A good point.
God, change of paint color.
Okay.
We don't want them to
wanna
come
do it.
here.
We don't wanna
No.
do it.
So that probably, okay. That probably should be its own separate
Well,
number.
that was the question.
So,
That's, yeah.
27
Some of these are getting,
big.
yeah.
snow removal purport, we talked about, well, it's gonna have to be approved by somebody. Sure, trash barrels,
I think one thing just from an speaks to 29, but it's an HGC thing, is they're very conscious of, where utilities go now and AC units relative to the fronts of buildings. So, you talk about no, or not you, this talks about no exterior air conditioning units or other mechanical equipment within lot setbacks. I think that, from an HGC perspective, you'd probably want to have none of that viewable from
Yeah,
the fronts of the buildings.
yeah. I think we should add that.
so are you saying not viewable from the street or not on the front facade?
Usually not on the front facade.
Okay, yeah, I think that's reasonable,
Yeah.
but,
So not visible on the front facade.
So trash barrels must be stored out of view, no exterior air conditioning units or other mechanical equipment to be placed in the front of the building.
well, definitely none in the lot setbacks. So
Right.
that can stay as.
That can
as-
stay.
Just say or within,
Or within, so other mechanical equipment.
Oh, and then period.
Or within lot setbacks.
What if it's concealed by vegetation?
But they
What's
could
that?
take that down.
Yeah.
I think
mean,
we
the
just
HCC
say-
is pretty clear about it now. They're
They
really
want you to
clear.
fence things.
And they don't want it on the front of a building.
I think it's fair.
Yeah, I think it's fine.
I mean, the hard part is when you get to I was gonna call it quadruplex, the fourplex, there's a front to every side of that building.
A good point, and no consideration on where they're putting anything. I hear you. I don't,
But then I think we just go with this, and then they have to figure it out, and if they have to come back and ask about screening or fencing or something, then
Right.
we
They have
allow
to
it with
remote it
screening
onto,
and fencing.
remote it on each of those sites maybe, and then screen it in the back somehow.
Yeah, but they'll have to figure that out.
Yeah.
Come back to us.
yeah, we're not gonna figure that
But I
one
like
out.
that up to the front facade of the building, because
On what?
It was a number 20,
No,
Yeah.
I know, but what are you saying, the evidence?
I think it needs to be defined like this, something like this, something having to do with the portion of the building that faces the street.
right.
There are no AC units, no mechanical equipment,
or trash barrel storage.
or trash barrel storage.
So, but on those multifamily buildings, if your entrance is not facing the road,
Right, well then, when we went in, we just note on it. No,
Okay.
we're just gonna have a big scribble, bubble
okay.
on a plan. Because you're right, we don't have a plan, we can't discuss it. This is information that we're lacking, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, affordable units have to have central air, assuming all the market runs do. Don't we want to say that?
I just said market and affordable.
Yeah, okay. All dwelling,
Yeah, but then you're requiring it, so. right?
If,
You're
just
saying-
say, if.
Yeah,
You're not requiring it.
I'm not requiring it, I agree.
Yeah,
Right,
if
it's
the
in
developer's providing air conditioning in the fair market rate.
That's
then
all I
yes.
was getting at.
And then I just, I don't know, just technical, but preference wise, if I'm scanning this in like, 2 years from now and someone comes back with a question, I think it would be helpful to like, start like number 30, like instead of having the air conditioning as the ending of the sentence, like air conditioning, colon, if blah, 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 like direct exterior access, colon, whatever. So then you can just like run down the list, and the same for the rest of it, like snow removal, blah, blah, blah.
Got you. I like that.
Because I just,
that's a good idea.
reading through the other ones, it was kind of,
So a little subtitle, a little titles, if
just
you will.
Yeah, make it easier.
Okay. The direct exterior access, including direct, if above or below directly accessible. That one sort of confused me, but
Including direct exterior access.
It's just minor drafting. All dwelling units with basements, because of, must have direct exterior access to the basement, including a direct exterior stairway access, if above or below directly accessible ground level. I'm not quite sure.
yeah, that's the part.
We just want.
That didn't help me
I
much.
said all
we want
single
the
family,
family, they had originally shown single families with
Right.
direct basement access.
Right.
We said, you've gotta do that for the affordable units also.
I think this is another one that should be broken up into two, only because I think all dwelling units must have direct exterior access. Doesn't that speak to the fourplexes and the duplexes not sharing an entry, like that they each have their own front door? Or is that not speaking to that?
It could.
I don't know if that's what the intention was. But then I just wrote all single-family dwelling units to have exterior basement access stairs per architectural plans.
Yeah, the reason it's confusing is I thought that that's what you meant, and I was just trying to figure out a way of wording it, but I thought your point was, you wouldn't want a unit that's only accessible once you're inside the building.
Right.
Right.
But that's a separate issue from the basement access.
Okay.
Because I think what we were saying is all single-family dwelling units should have exterior basement access stairs, which I think show up on these plans.
Yeah, I think referencing the plan is the way to go on a lot of it. I mean, I do think we want some there, but for instance, the duplex, they don't have basement access, period, from the outside, which I guess is fine.
Which is probably okay, as long as they have two means of egress, right?
Well, then there's no living in the basement in the duplexes.
Well, you could have, you don't, as long as you have an interior stair to a basement and you have a window that meets the egress code.
From a basement
From the
level, even
basement
if it's
level.
unfinished. I'm saying the duplexes do not have finished basements as drawn.
Oh, at all, I'm sorry.
No.
I didn't understand what you meant. I thought you meant that they didn't have basement access.
They also do not have exterior basement access, which is fine if they don't want to
What
build
sheet are
that.
you on? Oh, well, I guess.
Well, I'm on A1,
A0 or A1.
A1 of the duplexes.
Right. Doesn't,
Again, it's confusing, but, so I think,
They don't show any build out on the duplex basements?
no.
Because what you had said was, if you don't show it,
Yeah, no, they don't get it. Well, there's no window wells, there's no nothing.
Okay.
Well, there's no nothing. That's not good English. I know
So,
that.
but do we want to have, in addition to that, that the dwelling units all must have direct exterior access to them? Or do we care about that?
The single families.
Well, yeah, I mean,
That's where-
obviously you have to have direct access to a single family. I'm not talking about the basement.
Oh, I hear you. Different issue. I got you
issue.
now.
The way it's written, it talks about direct exterior access, so do the, duplexes and fourplexes, each dwelling unit in those should have direct exterior access.
So I just said all
Yeah.
dwelling units must have direct exterior access.
I think, yes, we
is
want that.
Okay, but that's a separate,
That's separate than all
Yes.
single-family dwelling units must have exterior basement access.
So are we saying that, like, say in the fourplex buildings, you need 4 separate exterior accesses?
No, only the single-family dwelling units must have exterior basement access, but all dwelling units must have direct exterior access.
So yes, on the fourplex, you have to be
stairwell.
Right, yeah, sorry,
Exactly.
was that what you were saying and I misunderstood?
for what it's worth, let's talk about it. I don't mind that they don't have 4.
How are you gonna have 4 sets of exterior
Well,
stairs?
look at it. They have it
what they
right
did.
now.
You
Yeah.
have 1 set of exterior stairs.
Not exterior
no.
stair.
we're talking
Yeah.
about,
You're talking
Entrances
about
to the
entrance to each unit from the ground level,
Yeah,
Yes.
okay,
not a shared hall, like you
That's
go into a
right.
apartment
Right, that's what
building.
they have, right? They
Yeah, that's
have-
what they have. It's
That's-
what's
that's
shown.
ground level.
They
What
don't
about-
have a
what
shared.
The basement level is,
You have 1 set of exterior stairs.
the basement level must, yeah, they have one
1 set of,
set of stairs, which is just some,
Wait,
1 set of
what?
exterior stairs.
one set of exterior stairs for
are
the
you on the
For all
quad?
4 of them to get to their storage
Yeah, on the
stuff.
quad.
storage and 2 bedrooms.
Yeah.
Well, you
So
get
I
to the
could be-
bedrooms from
so I'm-
inside as well.
But I can't get in.
Oh, so you're in it's a
I'm-
fire. You can get out that way or through the window. This person can get out this way or through there.
Who
Good
has
luck.
keys to this? So like, this guy is coming to his thing and he can come down and somehow get into my,
No, you would
there'll
lock
be a-
that
There'll be a
door would
door
be
there that
locked.
would lock.
but it connects to the bedroom? I don't like that.
No.
It does.
The bedroom's within the
Yeah, but I'm
lockable
saying
door,
you
though.
could, if he broke in here, he could come in here.
All right. Well, we can't.
I know, I just.
Protect
don't know.
everything.
Whatever.
Okay. No waiver of local requirements, building height, ground cover, yeah. Basically says you can't make the building bigger. Site roadways shall remain private, we talked about that, that's what the developer said. On 35, my only comment was it could be, does it have to be native stone chip seal finish with concrete curbing, or could it be chip seal with
Of
granite?
course it can.
Yeah, so, or a combination thereof.
Yeah, yeah.
And you said vertical granite, right, Jeff? On the curb.
I think so, yeah.
Okay. Lighting plan 38, even though they're not on the plan. I was gonna just be very clear, no garages allowed.
Where are we at now?
I'm just was adding one,
Are you adding?
yeah.
And somewhere it says something about sheds being on all, well, it's not, they're on the plan, so I guess we don't
Yeah.
have to mention them. No garages.
Well, I do think we have to mention sheds, given the fact that they have to be provided. In other words, miraculously, they can't only be on the market rate units, even though they show on a plan. They have to,
What about the duplex and fourplex?
They have basement storage, right?
yeah, they have basement. I mean, it's
So
awkward,
we should make a
but
note that there's no
no
no sheds allowed on those lots,
Yep,
duplex or fourplex lots.
yep.
Are we- Sheds only allowed on single-family lots and to be provided on all lots.
So we should say all single-family dwelling units shall have a shed,
Right. Whether affordable or market rate.
and then no sheds on duplex or fourplex lots.
Yep.
Can you repeat that for George, since he was
No duplex, no sheds.
Yeah, no sheds on duplex or fourplex lots, and all single-family dwelling units shall have a shed.
Why wouldn't, they didn't ask them, but why wouldn't you have a shed on the duplex?
Well, you would if you can fit it.
Yeah, but then
It's all a matter of fitting everything.
And then on the fourplex lots, you'd have 4 of them? I mean, it just would look,
Yeah.
Fourplex
would
is,
a,
they have some storage in the basement.
the duplexes don't
If I
have
was
the
a
storage?
duplex, I would really want a shed.
They have storage, they get their whole
You
basement.
wouldn't want a shed?
I would 100% want a shed, but
Well-
does the site,
You know, you could cut it down to 30 units on this whole lot, and you could allow 3 sheds on everybody's lot.
well, you could allow
We're dealing-
garages,
We're dealing with
actually.
90 units, so.
Exactly.
I think we gotta make, yeah,
Yeah, it's fine, I'm just.
I mean, if it's uncomfortable to live there and because the developer wanted to squish everything in,
Sure.
It's a sacrifice of living in a crowded development.
it is too bad that they don't have, because it looks like the duplex units get the entire basement.
It's storage mechanical.
Yeah, that you'd have to bring your bike inside to
know.
take it downstairs.
bummer.
Why, should we require
No.
exterior access to this?
no, we shouldn't require it.
Because then you'll think it'll get built out somehow.
Yeah, I just don't, again,
we're-
talking about, I just
You
don't
can always
think,
come back and say, I really wanna put sheds on these, or I really wanna put
Right.
exterior access
Okay.
to the basement, and, cause that would be a nice thing to do for these people, and we could say yes.
I don't think we want to impose that
We
type
put it
of
on the plan,
condition.
So,
There's definitely economic, I mean, if we said you had to put a shed everywhere,
Yeah, people don't.
they didn't ask
I
for
think
them,
it'll look,
quays
it'll
or
look
something.
ugly, actually,
yeah, okay.
the sheds.
to put too
But
many
he
of them.
did put them in a single family.
Bless
Well,
you.
that doesn't bother me. I just think when you get into multifamily lots,
Yeah, I
how are they
agree.
gonna be organized relative to the entrances? And
Yeah.
what's
No,
on-
that's
Let's move
crazy.
on.
All right,
Okay?
Again, shed only on single-family
Yep.
dwelling.
yep.
Yeah,
As shown on the plan,
That's
Yeah,
shown on the plan.
but all units, yeah.
Okay, and then we get into basically incorporating John Chessie's conditions, which are, talk a lot about the,
Did you guys talk about anything about 32 to 37 on the existing draft?
We did.
oh, just that, the chip seal.
yeah, we agreed with
35,
32, good. 33, good.
Good.
Basically no changes. Roadways, private, developer agreed to that. On the chips, on the type of road, and it could be a combination of any one of those materials. We don't,
So it can be chip seal on sidewalks and roadways with concrete or granite curbing, conventional asphalt with brick sideways granite or concrete curbing.
Oh, yeah, okay.
local requirements
garages.
concern, yeah, and then lighting plan, local requirements, sounds reasonable.
George, did you get the one no garages?
Just let's be specific.
Just confirm no garages.
I mean, none are shown on a plan, but let's just be clear. So then,
This all, I mean, putting no garages is good because it, when an owner wants to put a garage on some piece of point, you just say, look, no
it's
garage.
right there. Yeah. So John Chessie's stuff will be added to this. I don't think, most of it is, it's not technical, but it's technical to some degree, so we'll rely on John's recommendations, I think. The building height and massing, we just haven't gotten there yet. I think the cottages we're good on, and we might need to tweak them a little bit. We could go there, or we can try to finish this document. What is
But
everybody?
let's talk about the fire chief.
Yeah, because it may inform some of our decisions,
Yeah.
right?
Well, the fire chief's, it's in here,
I didn't see it. I didn't get to the end
I
of
thought.
this. His comments?
Oh, right here, right on this page, number.
No, I know that. I want to talk
Oh.
about his comments because I don't remember
Okay.
seeing them.
All right, go ahead.
I don't have the letter. He
Oh.
said he made comments.
Yeah, did we get that?
I don't remember seeing it.
Didn't everyone get that? I got it. Didn't I get it?
I thought I forwarded it to you, hold on.
Yeah, you forwarded it to me.
Thanks for sharing.
I can't, and I don't talk to you directly.
I know.
So
I don't remember. I might have missed it, but I don't remember seeing it.
I didn't print it, so.
Came in late in the game.
There was a site plan with some circles on it.
Yeah, that was one page. The other page was a list, a narrative that,
When did that come through?
I'll find it, hold on. Yeah, I think it came from Eleanor.
It came from George.
Came from George?
No, it ended up coming to you, Eleanor, a letter from the fire chief.
Yeah, no, I
And
know,
then
you
you-
sent it to me.
And then you definitely forwarded it, because I saw you forwarded it.
I'll do it again.
There it is. I got it on May 16th, 2:15.
And we're all on there?
No, Eleanor sends it to everybody individually.
So it would have come from Eleanor.
Well, no, this was going to George and Ed as well, so
I'm sending it to you right now.
I assume you got it. I don't know.
On what day did you get it?
I got it on May 16th.
Yeah, I didn't get that.
Okay, I'm going to read it so everybody hears it. You want me to start? Or do you guys want to read it? And I'll take a break. I don't care. I'm happy to read it.
Yeah.
I'd rather read it. I've heard you talk enough.
Works for me. You guys read it, because you didn't do your, no, maybe you didn't get it. And I'll be right back.
Well, she just resent it right now. We just got it.
I'll send the plan to you.
Good?
Almost.
Just well, Jeff's gone, it really doesn't matter, but can you stay, you're going to the selectmen or something later?
I have to go to Concom upstairs at 4.
Oh, at 4, okay.
I have a meeting here at 6.
Well, and you want to catch the 4:15?
I am under directive, I have to be at that,
Yeah, no worries.
or else I'd be happy to.
Sure.
I'm under a similar directive,
From a high,
not from a higher authority.
I understand.
Ironically, it's another Josh Posner project upstairs.
I know, it's funny.
That kind of day. That kind of day.
Oh, you got it? Well, does anybody else need to make a quick pee break? If that's permissible to even say? Before we get going, because we got a limited, probably another hour.
It's cold.
Thinking about one of those chocolate chip cookies.
No, we didn't get where no one brought us chocolate chip cookies. You can have part of a pig bar. Yeah, I'm glad too. No, I like the
I like
chocolate.
them, I just
Yeah,
don't need to
it's-
eat them.
No, yeah.
It's like 4 cookies in one.
All right, so here's Lisa. We ready? So the fire chief's comments. What are our thoughts after reading? My easy thought is to incorporate all of the fire chief's
I agree.
concerns as conditions, if you will.
Yep.
And does that change? I mean, really, if you have to get rid of that one dead-end road,
Here, this one he circled.
yeah. I mean, doesn't that speak to reducing the density?
You know, I wish I saw this earlier, but to me, this is pretty substantial.
Yeah.
How it relates to all the other things we
health and
discussed. It's not
safety.
really like to me, it's not like a Chesia letter that we incorporate.
No,
I mean, there's a big
Yeah.
concern about the water that's not answered, so. And
All the
also
more
the access to the duplexes or the quadplexes, again, questions
Well,
of the whole.
that was based on the multifamily units.
Right, but
Yeah.
does that still exist even if they were reduced? I think it
I mean, he's
is,
still saying they'd have to fight fire through
because
parked
we
cars.
don't know what the layout's gonna
Yeah.
be.
Yeah, because of the parking. Yeah, without a parking plan of how that's gonna work.
How do we go about that, George and Ed? I mean, if there isn't a definitive plan, I mean, there is a plan.
And then all the parking that he says we can't have parking on the one-way streets and
One thing I just want to note, just to back up a little bit, the fire chief's comments, the applicant agreed for those substantive comments to come in after the close of the public hearing.
Definitely.
Right,
Yes.
So that's why that's before you at all.
yeah,
That did come in late in the game, but that's the purpose of having these several deliberation sessions.
yeah.
So the only thing I left was a placeholder to just add them. And the only way I see of dealing with them is to add them as conditions as best we can glean from his letter. And if that results in other site plan design changes, then you have to note those as well.
What about the water, though? the concern with the amount of water.
Yeah,
And he had
is-
said that at the meeting, he had said that was going to be a concern.
Yeah.
And that we didn't have that hydraulic study.
Well, they should be able to, and as part of the process, they'll do a flow test on the available water out there, and that flow test will tell them what kind of a fire they can fight, or how much water they can produce.
Shouldn't that-
But when do we get that
We
flow
don't-
test?
Yeah.
Well, it's something that,
And then
probably
the,
should have already been done. I'm not quite sure I know why it hasn't been done.
but then he makes it mention that it's also on the same main as the hospital and the,
Schools.
yeah.
I don't know what that has to do with it. I mean,
What if they,
If there
It'd be a
was
huge
wholesale
fire.
conflagration and all those buildings were going up at once,
we'd have bigger fish to fry,
I
suppose.
think
I
so.
would think so too,
Yeah,
right?
but,
We'd be fighting for little boats.
yeah.
Then Jim, you'd be super popular.
Jim, don't forget me.
You know,
I mean, the National Fire Protection Association has rules and regulations and guidelines regarding how much water you need, how much flow you need to fight a certain particular size fire, and if they can't produce,
All sorts of rules, but the fire chief has to sign off on the issuance of the building permit, so the flow test would have to be done.
the flow
Prior
test
to
would
that
have to
point.
be done,
Yeah,
sure.
he's talking about, right, in follow-up to what Ed said, that's what I was anticipating doing with his comments. Just putting it in, including, conditions subsequent, which are, subject to further review and approval with
Yeah.
him.
But he also,
It's a state fire code issue, so.
I agree, but he also makes it, the development places an overwhelming responsibility on the fire department if an emergency was to arise. But he
Right.
obviously has a lot of reservations about it.
yeah,
So
this,
that's why I
this,
think it goes
this to
beyond
me is more
conditions.
than just the checklist.
I
Yeah.
agree.
And this is brought up from the first hearing where the fireman stood up and said, we don't have the manpower. I know that's not really discussed, but now it's a water problem. And this can happen I mean, the weather's getting worse. I can see hurricanes coming here, and for whatever reason, multiple buildings.
Transformers.
Big.
The
rolling.
4-unit building's gonna have to be sprinkled, right?
I don't know. I didn't multiple
Yeah,
choice.
anything over 3, I think
But-
it has to be sprinkled. So yes.
It is conceivable.
This
That
does speak
big
to the
buildings.
lack of information. I mean, this is difficult for us.
I just feel like it's very irresponsible to try to, like, I don't want to be irresponsible in my decision making on this, and I feel like being forced, and again, it doesn't matter because we're being forced to make decisions that really have to do with the safety of the people that are going to be living in this development based on
Or the neighboring houses.
this. It's really, I just find it really irresponsible.
Well, you do have
on
the
level of-
40A, 40B issue. If somebody were coming in with a 40A, that met zoning.
That met zoning.
It wouldn't be this dense.
Well, 5,000 square. No, I'm not defending the project.
No, I know.
But what
Right,
I'm
but what
saying
you
is
said-
that they're, if they can't meet the minimum fire requirements, they shouldn't be able to get a building permit. Or
So that gets caught.
Because of health and safety. And the things that are.
yeah,
I just
100
want to feel like we're kicking the can down the road to someone else who then is going to have
building
to catch
department.
it. And if they don't catch something, then
It's
we
yeah.
have inadvertently let something go through that we didn't want to because we weren't given the opportunity to make.
We weren't given enough information.
Yeah.
You just have to try to put conditions in and per his recommendations and see where you're at with that. If you
And
see
then-
that, if you see that you feel you have to deny the project after you look at the conditions and you don't feel that you can condition it properly.
Well, I think,
Yeah, so
for
that's,
health and safety concerns, and that's,
it's still an option, the denial.
Well,
is
without
still
a
an option.
plan, I don't understand how we. I
Well,
don't
we
know.
can't make these
I mean,
types of
it's-
determinations because
it
he
again-
can't.
Right.
it again comes down to the multifamilies. And, whether it's a 8-unit or 4-unit, it seems to me like you still have the same problem with the fire department. It's hard to tell
Mike?
because.
Well,
he doesn't have a
I
plan to
also
look
think,
at.
I'm
If
not a
it were
fire,
all single-family houses, I don't think
Well, Mike.
that the fire department would have an issue with the water
Well, I think my concern now is even though we've,
And access.
like, he looked at this with the big 8-unit ones, right? And those are gone. But my concern is, it just, fine, those are gone, so that, a little bit of that goes away, but still having to fight a fire through parked cars. And then the concerns that he has about the parking, reduction of the roadway, of the dead-end roads. I think
Those are
there's
conditions
two.
I think they can meet in the site plan if they're listed out.
I think you're right.
Those
Yeah.
conditions, I think they can meet. The
Although the
question about the
parking,
parking in
yeah.
front of the buildings is a question.
Yeah.
But it might reduce parking where we're trying to
Then what does he
increase
say?
it,
Yeah, like adjusting handicap spaces to allow space between them so that they can so they have emergency access onto the path near the picnic area. But like, we don't even know that that's going to be where it is.
Well,
Like,
there's-
and how
If-
big of an emergency access do they need? Like, is that?
So
that's in a
I read
building
this as they're
somewhere?
telling us potentially they cannot fight a fire on the large building. Whether
They-
it's water or whether it's access, so.
And I don't know where the fourplexes are going to go, but his comment was that the way that the buildings were sited, those big ones, they did not, if I read this correctly, they only had access to the rear of one building. They couldn't even get to the back of some of them. to
Yeah,
fight
no,
a fire.
the
I mean,
plan had definite
But I do,
firefighting
as a developer,
deficiencies.
wouldn't you have gone to the fire department and said, "Hey guys, what do you think about this thing we're trying to build here?" Like,
One would think, but they didn't, so,
and we did put a restriction on, we had said that the fourplexes had to be at least 30 feet apart. So
so that's
presumably,
good.
they could drive the trucks through there, get stuck on the grass or whatever.
If
but-
cars weren't parked all along
If
there.
cars are parked along there, but I don't know, I just think I think, I agree with Jim to a certain degree. I think there are conditions that I think you can put in there that they can meet, but I think obviously there's a lot of hesitation for the density of this development in that area.
I agree. I mean, I'm not a firefighter, but even this fourplex basement is a little warren of rooms with three sources of light. I mean, I wouldn't want to be down there, but yeah, there are issues, but there are other large buildings on the island
yeah.
that were built with the same fire department in mind.
But maybe not the same access issues.
Yeah, no, I think that's why we, as much as possible, put the conditions in, and then if, as George said, we are not comfortable that we've provided for the health and safety of the residents of this subdivision. Not to mention everybody else. If the neighboring.
Yeah, I mean, if a
It's-
fire from here goes over to Sherburne Commons,
Right.
it's disaster.
Or somebody's single-family house.
Right, yeah.
Ed, have you seen fire come up as an issue with other 40B? I'm just curious.
It usually doesn't come up as an issue because most developers realize nobody's gonna argue with the fire chief. So they do everything they can to satisfy the fire chief.
Right. And there are definitely some issues in here that the current plan does not meet.
You know, I think we're unique in that we have probably a more limited water availability than, say, a municipal community on the mainland, but maybe I'm wrong.
No, I think
about
I think we do, because other communities, if there's a huge fire, they can call in neighboring communities that have other water trucks and. So for lot 16, like a specific thing, like he's saying lot 16, like that dead end could be turned into either a lollipop or a hammerhead to allow for turning radius or turnaround. That's
Of course,
what-
the interest, yeah.
well, 16 is one of the ones that we said didn't have to have the 50 feet of frontage, so that's gonna, if just looking at this thing where he did the red circle, like if that went into a hammerhead or even the lollipop, it's gonna eat up a bunch of space where a fourplex would have gone. But I guess they'll have to figure that out, right? I mean, do we say that that dead end needs to meet fire code or meet the
Right.
recommendations of the fire
This
chief?
goes back to the beginning of the meeting, this is why I said about the number of units. If you end up with an approval with conditions, you're gonna back into the number of units based on all the concerns that are before you. So there's two issues really. Can it be conditioned per the fire chief's comments in terms of conditions subsequent, is review and approval of plans under the state fire code and this and that. And then there's also the issue of, he raised access issues and fire safety issues, access of emergency vehicles. Can you impose further conditions to satisfy his concerns? And if you do, does that result in a further reduction of the units? Like, you will, that's why I
Right.
kept asking about, well, are you eliminating 8-plexes entirely and having a separate number of approved 4-plexes? Or are you saying you can combine them into so many 4-plex units? So then if you're looking further now, are you then finding a lot that you say, you've got to remove the 4-plex located on this lot in order to address those concerns, and then you end up with a different number that way.
But are we gonna dictate that
We
to
can't-
them,
yeah.
or are we gonna,
You would-
cause.
Yeah, if you're gonna do an approval with conditions, you're gonna have to dictate it to them about the number of units that you're requiring.
I mean, but
We could make
can't-
it easy and just say you get 60 single-family homes, no basements, minimum 5,000 square foot lots, no 5 bedrooms, and move on.
Yeah, and you're allowed to do duplexes, or you're allowed to do 4-plexes, but not in this area.
Or
Well,
not.
You're saying you're not.
Or not. I mean, again,
gonna be
if we don't
seen as
feel like we
unreasonable?
can,
I just feel like.
I bet you'd still, I don't think you could make the unreasonable economic argument,
No,
frankly.
but I mean, are we gonna,
Well, there's other things that we haven't even talked about, which was the driveway locations relative to road intersections. That's gonna affect the density too. So I don't know how we, without a plan that addresses all the concerns that we have that we're not gonna waive, how do we come up with a density?
right, so I have no idea, right, if we don't redesign this plan, like changing just where there's lot 16 and lot 17 and lot 11 are, I don't know how to make it into a hammerhead or a lollipop or whatever the
Well, so,
police guy wants, and fire guy wants, and then I mean, that's up to the developer, what he can put there or still use there, like, I don't know how many units it's gonna,
Well,
I don't know
maybe-
what it's gonna cost him to comply with fire.
but maybe you just say then that our thing is with a maximum of 40 or maybe it goes to 36 single-family dwelling units, assuming you're gonna have, 4 of them drop away when you create that hammerhead and the other
Right.
issue.
Cause there's two areas he has.
Right, the other one is
He wants
accesses
that
a
to
lot of
happen.
lots.
I mean, I would imagine, you don't have the issues with the duplexes, but we don't know that from the fire access standpoint
Right.
and water, but, maybe we do
Well, the
allow a certain number of duplexes.
Right.
Right, just in the interest of moving on, we're not gonna decide unless we think this is the silver bullet, and we wanna redirect George to, go in the denial direction. What I would suggest is George tries to incorporate these things as conditions.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can
And
you also incorporate this, sorry, I'm cutting you off, but the plan that he sent with the red circles of where the areas are, and then his comments that were in that email as well? The follow-up email?
well, that might be in somewhere in a narrative, yeah, versus a
He
condition.
mentions it in the narrative, it's just more visual when you see the plan.
Yeah, no, I'm
Yeah,
saying
I
in
was trying to
George's
ask- I
narrative.
was trying to understand what he was saying
In the narrative,
right.
Because, yeah, that next email that comes,
we got a second email that shows the plan with the circles, and then it's really clear.
and that one has,
Yeah.
that one talks about the removal of buildings, the dead-end roads changing.
Right.
Creating access, moving parking spaces. But yeah, I think your suggestion is correct, Ed.
Yeah, and again, we can all think about this between now and the next meeting, and if in the end of the day is we just think it's too uncomfortable, or one building type just doesn't fit in with Nantucket in general, which we've already come down with, the whole development can change if we'd like it to. So, anyway.
And I'd underscore, had the public hearing been, had the applicant agreed to continue the public hearing, very often these get negotiated.
Yeah.
Or you offer mitigation to the fire chief. You say, you don't like that location, we don't have sprinklers in the other single families, we'll put sprinklers in those
Yeah.
2 or 3 buildings.
I mean, I'm guessing, I'm not a firefighting expert, but if the building is fire suppressed, sprinkled, the access becomes a little less of an issue.
Much easier.
So there are ways to get beyond, the water pressure issue, that we would never have had that, or the gallonage, we would have never had that info in this stage anyway. I mean, they have to be able to prove at a later stage that they can meet the code requirement for the number of buildings, the number of humans, et cetera.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm not as concerned about that as I am the access and,
Yeah.
so,
Okay. Fire protection, talked about. Public sewer, we talked about that, I believe, that we were basically in agreement that we were going to defer to the town's consultant and their recommended plan, which was,
There were quite a bit of, just an explanation on that, there's quite a bit of conditions to go into that, because
Yeah.
it's not just an issue of if you're requiring the preferred approach recommended by Weston and Sampson, which you are, you voted to do that, but it's also the standard conditions you put on, and well, there's a whole bunch of
Oh, yeah.
sewer-related conditions
Yeah.
that have to go in there, in addition to all the issues recommended by Weston and Sampson, so that's. But you're pretty much done with that one, you just have to look at what comes out.
right. And I don't think that the number of units materially would affect that.
If they do the preferred alternative.
Right. The public water connection issues, we talked about that, I thought, at relative length last time, and I thought it was a great idea that, as George just said about the sewer, there'll be a bunch of conditions, and this, that, and the other thing, but one of the more important ones will be they'll need to show evidence of some sort of approval from Mass DEP of the increased withdrawal rights. And I think that if that doesn't materialize, project can't start. Then we get into compliance with state and federal requirements. Do we need to go over each one of those? The only note I have is that I think there should be in the narrative or in the conditions or when we're talking about water quality and stormwater, you have to emphasize the Zone 2 issue.
Yeah.
Because it is a different set of requirements. Okay. I didn't see anything else in there. Did anybody else in the state and federal stuff? No. Local requirements. They have to pay all fees, charges, that's
Right.
44.
They asked for waiver at some point for sewer entry fees and stuff for the affordables. Is that,
I think we already indicated that we weren't willing to do that.
Yeah,
We-
okay.
We
So that
never
relates
have
to
been
that.
in the
Okay.
past. Other developers have gone to the selectmen and asked and gotten it, but that's up to them.
So on that note, I kind of cross-reference this
Sure.
to the waiver list. So anything that they're asking for a filing fee or an application fee, we're not granting?
No.
Okay.
Again, I don't know if we need to
I
put it in
agree.
there, George.
We did, you don't think?
I usually recommend an affirmative statement that no fees of whatever kind of.
Oh, yeah, no, we should definitely put it in. What I was gonna get at is,
Was in.
well,
You state that
including all fees and related charges in number 44. So all local requirement and regulations defined in 760 CMR 5602, including all and any related fees and charges. But what I was going to get at is that in the past, the other developers have asked the selectmen if they would waive the sewer connection fee.
Didn't they just send them back to us?
No.
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 We said that's not our deal.
Oh, right, yeah.
Well, they
I
came to
remember
us and we sent.
They came to us and we said no,
Yes.
Boards do not waive
fees.
fees.
So,
With
I don't know if we
other
need to put that language in there that if they want to go to the selectmen, that's up to them.
No, no, the part that is important, I thought, I don't know what happened on the other one, but, I mean, as Ed was saying, you don't wanna waive any related fees and charges, and that's what I thought I covered in 44.
Well,
Yeah.
and
But if you
it'll
think-
show up on the waiver list too, right?
Yeah.
'Cause they've
I'm
asked for it.
comfortable with 44. I don't,
We don't have to expressly say that they have the rights to go to the selectmen.
Yeah, we don't
They
need
have
to tell
waive
them what
that.
to
Why
do.
would we
Done.
put that
We'll
in
just say
there?
we're not gonna give them a waiver.
Yeah.
yeah, okay.
And the reason I normally recommend a simple declarative statement is that sometimes in the waiver, something sort of says, or whatever else is necessary to make the project
Right,
economic. And then you can make an argument, well, if we didn't have to pay the fees, it would be economic. So it's belts and suspenders.
I mean, 45 goes on to
I mean,
talk,
my concern about that, I wouldn't have it as, stupidly set forth as that, to have it an argument. I mean, where I would see it come up more is, all right, you had all these conditions relating to sewer hookup, and you didn't say anything about fees, therefore, we're doing this with a way, there's an argument there, and that's why,
Yeah.
I think as long as we all agree that I'm covering in 44, that catch-all specifying, we're not waiving any local fee, and when I reference the regulation standard, that defines, local regulations that would be applicable to 40B, and that includes everything we'd have. So if we think we need more belts and suspenders, let's do that, because the intent of that is to just specify, there's no argument down the line that any fee or charge has been waived in any way, shape, or form. That's really the only thing I'm trying to get at there.
okay. You say it again in 45, by the way, so I'm comfortable with it
Yeah.
if everyone else
I am.
is. And again, in 46, it says you have to pay the fees. So,
One other thing, George, there was a specific requested waiver for 760 CMR 56.05 subsection 6. Now, it's, well, I'm looking at
Look
the
at the
waiver
waiver
list.
list.
What does it ask
Have
for?
we covered that? I don't even know what it's copies of materials applications filed with the subsidizing agency.
Oh, the waiver,
So
yeah, no,
submit
we're
that?
gonna have a separate, it'll probably be in the form of a spreadsheet on the appendix.
Okay, so we
We'll get
address.
into that yet. And I had a couple of questions for Eleanor about a particular zoning provision, so I just wanna, before I give you what waivers you're granting, I just wanted more time on that.
okay. So affordable units, on 48 just asked for the number again. 49, just, again, evenly distributed within the locus. Do we need to reiterate the pro rata bedroom issue in there, or,
I think this would be a good section to add.
yeah?
And I'm not concerned, I'm normally not concerned about redundancy. So if we have it someplace else in here, I think it belongs here in the affordable units also.
Yeah, which part is that?
The pro rata, so if they have 4 or 5 bedrooms, one of them has to be affordable.
Okay. No, I think that would be a better way of doing it.
Yeah.
Because it adds ambiguity if it's in a separate place.
Right. Right.
And we'll want to, I'll send this to a reference to the using the universal deed rider, which is what subsidizing agencies require. Which protects affordability in the event of a foreclosure. And George has that in here, but that language would be good.
I don't see anything in 50, 51. Again, unless Ed, you
I'm going to add
You-
some
yeah,
specific stuff, but it's.
add some specific stuff. The management documents. Again, these are all things they need to come up with anyway. We would not have probably poured over every one. It's just,
We wanna make sure we have sewer pump stations, whenever we list this stuff.
Does this also cover condo docks and
There should be a separate section on
Rules.
condo docks.
And
HOA and condo
org?
docks.
Yeah, org docs. The developer, what
Do we have to,
the HOA entity and who controls it?
in the same, so in well, I guess the condo docs would be for the fourplexes.
Yeah.
yeah, I think there was some later on.
One other, sorry to go back on the the developer did ask for waivers for affordable units on the fees.
Yeah, no, they
We're not
asked.
gonna grant.
Oh, I thought you said they didn't
Yeah.
ask. Sorry.
Okay, so on profitability, that just sort of basically outlines the fact that if there's any excess, it goes to the town. Marketing, again, I guess this is where I'm beginning to have some issue. Blah, 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 blah. No construction of any, 57, no construction of any dwelling unit until this permit shall commence until the applicant has submitted to the board for review and final acknowledgement of consistency with this decision and marketing plan. So is there, just from a workability standpoint, do we then review it, the board, or we give it to you, George?
This is above and beyond, in terms of Amesbury decision, George and I will discuss this.
Okay.
Part of the final approval is, an important part is affirmative fair housing
Right,
marketing
there's a whole marketing plan.
and lottery.
Yeah, that's what I had lottery.
We have an approved
And who manages the
marketing
lottery?
plan.
You?
What?
Now, who will manage the lottery? Somebody has to do
So-
that, correct?
They'll hire a lottery agent, and then there'll be a monitoring agent who monitors, reviews
Right.
the lottery agent. And you can't count units on the subsidized housing inventory unless there's an approved lottery affirmative fair housing marketing plan.
Right, well, we don't have to get into the, we need the nitty gritty in
I
here,
got the language.
but we don't need to get into it.
You don't need to. No.
Okay, conditions precedent to commencement of the project, so all, these would all need to be met before there was any site disturbance, including grading, land disturbance, construction of any structure, et cetera. So final review, this is where I began to get uncomfortable with the 45 days. Final review of the building permit plans is what I'm thinking we're talking about now. The final plans, the approved construction plans. The applicant must secure board approval prior to construction and allow the board 45 days to review the detailed construction plans. Now, again, we're not engineers, we're not experts, there's no time for peer review. I don't even know if that's a possibility any longer. Now, I know this is the normal, you only have to provide preliminary plans. This is a little unusual because we don't even have a preliminary plan, really. So is 45, my questions were, are 45 days enough? Is peer review normal in this situation?
Let me jump in.
Go ahead.
40B projects are based upon preliminary plans.
Yep.
Once you get the permit, you go to a final approval, you do building permit plans. That's when the building inspector assumes responsibility to do two things. Review the plans for consistency with the plans referenced in the comprehensive permit, which is normally not a big deal. Here, we've got that issue, so we have to deal with it. Review the plans for compliance with the building code. The ZBA normally doesn't get involved with that at all. You don't have the expertise. So answer your question about peer reviews, if there's a building type that would not normally be reviewed by the building inspector, that's way beyond his experience or her experience level, then you might ask for a peer review of that particular plan. These are relatively straightforward
Okay,
But what about the fact that we don't have a site plan?
so
I mean, will the site plan come back to us and say, this is the plan that meets all these requirements?
and then we're supposed to fine tooth comb it to make
In
sure it
45 days.
complies, all within basically one meeting? That just seems insane to me.
That is.
Yeah.
I mean, so again, we're in this tweeners.
But, so it's
We
40,
don't have a final plan.
is 45 days a requirement from the state, or can we change that?
You can change that.
So let's change it.
Reasonable.
I mean,
90
I would
days?
think 90 in this case, if what we're talking about is basically getting a first look at a new site plan that's gonna come about.
I mean, could we ask for 120 and then negotiate
No, I
down?
go with 90.
I think
I
we
mean,
should just put
90
it where we want.
arguably is 3 meetings. And it's not necessarily a give and take with the applicant, it's us fine tooth
Right.
combing
public-
it.
Is it a public
You're gonna
meeting?
have to have a peer, you're not gonna do.
Well, the problem with the peer review, in my notes, the procurement process last time, and took about 4 months, it seemed, for us to go through the town's procurement process. Now, maybe if Ed Pesci or whomever,
Does he have a contract?
he has a contract, so he could do that. Okay.
That's what I would do.
Yeah.
But, well, wait, I was gonna ask something else about that then.
I'm
Is it a
just
public
wondering how it
hearing?
works.
Oh, right, that's
Because
my
obvious,
question.
Is it a public hearing?
Shouldn't be a public hearing.
Does it, no, so it can't be a public hearing.
Well, you'd want to draft this condition so that it does not trigger a public hearing.
No, I guess it depends how you feel about it, but,
I would, if it's a public hearing, I think we need more time because obviously the public would want to have a lot to say about it.
well, yeah, and that's sort of it's like, shouldn't the public, who does not have,
I
It's
don't,
not, okay.
oh, can't be, okay, fine.
Because I don't know if I would feel comfortable conditioning it to not be a public hearing if it was allowed
well,
to be.
one of my
Right.
questions is,
Let's set it, break it down a little with that too, the intent of this is to have your review of, as you said, the permit's based on the preliminary plan, so it's
Yeah.
a mechanism for you to review compliance. But there's a separate procedure when they want to get a building permit. So there's a separate section on that, so I'm open to suggestion about how you want to do it. But there's a lot in here too that
Right.
provides that other part of review, and I'm not finding it quickly, but I had also talked about their responsibility for peer review fees.
no, you definitely didn't. I saw all that. I was mostly concerned with the time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The 45 days just didn't seem adequate.
yeah.
And my other question was simply, are we the ones who should be reviewing and approving the plans, or should the building department, or
But you're saying they do that
The
later.
building department.
we'll do that later?
Right.
Got
When they
it. So
apply
this
for
would
the
almost be a
building
check and a balance, both of us would be doing it.
I would say if we could do 90 days or 120, and then if we come in sooner, great, but, and if Ed Pesci's already on a contract, maybe we don't need the 120, but I'd rather have more time and not need it than be stuck with, okay, well, we were at the end of the public hearing.
Only to the extent that this is a unique
Yeah,
experience in that we don't have really the preliminary. I mean, we
Right.
do have
We
the
don't have a
92
plan.
unit plan, but it's going to need to be changed, but
I mean, ideally, the developer would begin working with you and say, look, we think this complies with the conditions in the comprehensive permit. What do you think?
do you think that's gonna
And
happen?
then, once you get consensus on that, ship it out to the building inspector. You don't know code. The building inspector knows code.
okay. So what do we think, 90, 120? Is 120 reasonable? Ed? George?
Well, I had 45.
I know.
So if Ed's okay with 100,
I think 90 would be reasonable.
90 days.
Okay.
Okay. On the bond issue, you have, the cost, the estimated cost plus 10% and some inflation factor, that seems, I'm sure that's semi-normal, but it seems low to me. I was thinking the cost times 1.5 or, cost
Cost
times.
plus-
You have that in your
plus-
other
plus.
150%.
I think we did.
There
that's
was
what we did
definitely a
for-
surety bond in at least one of the other ones. The other interesting thing, and this may not be the place to discuss it, but there were certain, in one of the other, and I think it was Rugged Scott, all right, but I can't remember. Some of the costs were capped. The developer overhead, and I'm shooting from the hip here, we'll get to it.
On one,
That's Sachem's.
Was Sachem's?
Sachem's, 15.
No, not the 15%. These were like line item costs. We'll get to it, I'll find it.
I think that was Sachem's because NHA.
Because there's a line item in the original Pell pro forma, or whatever you want to call it. It's like developer,
Developer fee,
not fee, it was something else. It was like 250 grand.
developer overhead.
But all, I think it should be capped. We'll get to it, never mind, I'm out of order. Because I know everybody's gotta leave.
Where you were at, I would recommend too, the board sort of vote to authorize you, the chair, to work with council on this, on the second draft that's gonna come in. Because
Okay.
certain of these issues, like,
Yeah,
we can easily come up with either a substitute provision or something broken down on a couple of the things combining your customary practice on the other permits.
okay.
So on things that don't, I'm not talking about going outside the record, but just in terms of not having duplicative conditions and something that covers it in a way that's satisfactory.
Yep.
Much more efficient.
If you charge the chair with being able to work with council.
I make that motion.
I second that.
I think it's unanimous. I'm sure Karen would have voted too.
All right, so the motion's been made and seconded to authorize me to work with town council and our consultant on, okay,
On the second draft.
on the second draft.
Deliberation at the
Yeah.
next deliberation session.
Okay, any further discussion on that one?
No.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Okay, all right, so back to the bond. It seems to me an easier computation is 1.5 times the estimated cost. Yeah, 1.5 times.
Plus the escalator for the inflation?
Well, inflation's running what,
It should be at 1.5.
Just 1.5?
The 5-year period, I wasn't sure about because I'm not sure it's gonna get built out.
Should it be, so it should be longer?
I would assume. No.
yeah, it's a good point. Both I'm not sure the 5-year period will be adequate. It wasn't,
I thought Jamie said longer than 5 years.
no, Jamie said half a year, which I don't think, I'm kidding, which,
No, he did say it was gonna be quick.
it was, no, he anticipates a couple of years,
Yeah.
which is fine.
I think that's quick.
But this is just infrastructure. Don't you do it all at once?
Well, we did on,
That's true.
what?
Oh,
Yeah, this is on the
We have a
infrastructure.
phasing plan that infrastructure should get done sooner.
Should get done in 5 years, or there's,
I was thinking about the sellout.
yeah. When we get to the landscape issue, like we did at the other one, there was a bond on the landscape. And I think the
That's one.
estimated cost was 500,000. And they got a bond, cost them 50, blah, blah, blah. So what do we think here? 1.5 times?
Yep.
Yep. So what happens if the infrastructure isn't built out in 5 years? The bond expires?
If the infrastructure, I think it's spelled out here a little bit later on, but if,
You can't sell a
Well-
house.
Well, the bond kicks in, doesn't it? If it's not complete.
in the absence of completion of the above work, the aforesaid sum shall be paid to the town of Nantucket in order to complete the construction. In accordance, I mean, if we're at this point, It's pretty ugly.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm sure everybody's suing everybody, so,
Yeah.
but
Okay.
I'm curious, this, just as a point of edification, let's say this happened, and the bond is, the money's given to the town, does the town have to finish the project? Or finish the infrastructure?
No, would be my answer. And the reason for it is to protect the residents. If something gets partially built, you have people living there, then the purpose of this requirement is to protect the residents there. You're not stuck somewhere with half a roadway.
Right. I do
Town
think
would
it
have to
gets to,
finish it. They would have to finish it in so much as to make it safe or
Correct.
habitable for the people that were living there,
Correct.
but not have to finish the project.
Correct.
okay.
Remember, it has, in order to get a certificate of occupancy, as George wrote here, whatever infrastructure is necessary to support that house has to be in place.
Right, 100% it has to be done. The final binder
Well,
coat.
not final binder necessarily.
I would think to get a CO, yeah, has to be final binder coat and landscaped.
For CO?
No.
No,
Not
not the binder,
final
not the
course-
final, because they're
yeah,
gonna be
not a
working
final
on all.
course.
Well, that's where the phasing plan comes in. So
Right.
you don't have to they didn't final coat phase 1 at Sachem's,
Yeah, Sachems, you had a final coat,
but it was after.
no trucks were gonna be going over that area. So as part of the phasing plan, I think you asked for that.
All right, well, I don't want to get stuck on that.
We
Yeah.
don't have a phasing plan.
No,
do
of
we?
course not. The final plan, which is in, we need that. The final plans including phase, this is a number 3.
Because phasing plans will also have to go over in that 90-day period, correct?
Yeah. The monitoring agreement in 4, we don't have to talk about, the language has to be in there. Same with the
I'm
rate.
gonna update
Right.
some of these.
You guys are gonna work on 4 or 5. Then you get to 6, which is the stormwater pollution prevention plan, erosion control plan, and stormwater management operations and maintenance plan. These are conditions that have to be met before they can do any work there.
And these are standard, correct?
Well, the question I have here, George, is you've put in language submitted to the Nantucket Conservation Commission.
Yeah, because I need to look at the requirements. That's who I thought approved the stormwater management plan.
Interesting.
But I might.
I have no idea.
Look at it.
Okay, because I had question marks there. I'd rather have them do it than us, because again, we don't have any expertise.
But I guess
I
my
don't think
question was
I
that,
don't think the Conservation Commission reviews it. If it's not in their jurisdiction, it doesn't go before that.
Yeah, but I thought under the Wetlands Protection Act, the stormwater management plan is something under the Wetlands Protection Act.
If it's in the wetland, yeah, but
Is it?
this area is not subject to wetlands.
The planning board does it?
I thought the planning board normally did it.
They do, Ed Cushy does it for them, basically.
All right, so
All right,
George, just check on that one. I don't think it's the Concom.
okay, so my question was though, these are all like standard things that are required for them to submit. It's not we're not asking them to do anything that's
Right.
onerous and outside the norm.
right.
No.
But you
we're
say the
gonna-
planning board or whoever it is, that really means us, right? The ZBA?
No, no. I just need to check the jurisdictional requirement of the stormwater management plan.
But for this,
Chesia might have mentioned
And
this.
Chessie's recommendations are gonna be incorporated into whatever.
Here, yes. And if it's redundant from what Chesia said, this will be stricken.
Okay, 8, the landscape plans are noted. They have to be submitted to the board for our approval. My concern here is only that, there is a baseline right now where they've listed the trees and shown us a plan. the final plan can't come back as something markedly different. I don't know if you put language into that effect or, you know, that's up to you, George.
Is this where you speak about the caliper of the tree? Or no, is that
Well,
just gonna
yeah.
be the waiver?
Number 10, right?
Oh, there it is. Okay, is it?
Well, no, those are existing trees.
Maybe it should go back in the
Well,
augmentation.
back to number 8 in the final landscape. It has to comply with there are town rules and regulations about
Right.
caliper size, and we're not giving them a waiver on it.
No.
I don't believe they even asked for the waiver, so it needs to meet
Didn't we
that.
go through this last meeting? Though?
We
Some
did.
of the
Yeah, it
stuff
just
that
says
they
need to meet town
identified.
Their plans,
Meet
again,
towns.
it goes to the discussion that I hope the language is in here, I think it is, that just because it's on a plan, if it doesn't comply, we're not approving that. Right?
Right.
Yes, I was earlier.
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
This goes more to your ability to review the plan.
Right. So, you know, 8 trees over 8 inches, they have to identify them, but,
I mean, yeah.
okay. Again, this is a lot of stuff that we're supposed to be approving, and construction schedule, identifying the sequence and approximate dates. Should we be explicit that we get 90 days to do that as well?
Yeah, I'll take a look.
All right, take a look at that. Take a look at anything that requires our review, that we have adequate time.
It's a lot of stuff.
Number 11, the O and M plan has been submitted?
Well, this is a condition.
Oh, okay, fine.
That threw me in the beginning. But again, it says that back to 11, the O and M plan is, oh yeah, reviewed and approved by the board. There should be a time period in there, or if it's open-ended, can we just not, take our sweet time? I doubt it. Does there need to be specific language, another line item on the existing sewer easement protection plan?
Say that again?
Does there need to be a specific paragraph about the existing sewer line easement protection plan for review by somebody?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. I'm trying to accelerate here because we got no time. On 15, cut and fills. What I'd like to have in there, if everybody thinks it's a reasonable idea, the site is relatively flat, but it's not flat. But I'd like there to be some before and after that is approved. In other words, I wouldn't want to take a site that, just for ease of math, is at 31 now on average, and all of a sudden it's at 34 average because they brought in a lot of dirt and it's popped up over the neighbors. So there needs to be a before and after, and basically stating you cannot change the relative average grade.
Lisa had asked for an assistant topo.
We got something, but
On this?
it needs to be a little clearer and I think it needs
It
to
might just be
state.
done by spot elevations, so I don't remember. I don't think we ever got anything as
I don't think
Topo.
we-
told us we wanted.
Right.
Yeah, I don't
talked
think
We didn't get, again, George, to the point of lack of information.
Building, we asked for building.
Yeah.
There was some cuts and fills and some elevations on some previous plans, but on this, there's nothing.
We got the GIS contour map from them.
Yeah, but I mean, I
very
can go get that on my, and
That's
it's
not
not accurate.
Yeah.
I don't see anything else. I mean, there are other things. It's the final plans, fire chief, want to comment, 10-foot separation. We're gonna have to go through that. Does anybody else have anything on page 16?
Nope.
Are you making any comments in terms of irrigation? Are they gonna have a private well?
They said they were gonna have a private, it's a good point. Irrigation will be provided by a private well. I believe, one for the whole subdivision. I think that's what
I
they
think
said.
that's
It
true.
would be crazy to use municipal water for that.
Yeah, I think they said it would all be kept on site.
So something should be put in there. I mean, arguably, that would be on the landscape plan, or some plan. So that's
It
for
does
our
say
final
as shown
approval.
on landscape plan.
I can't read my notes on the next page, but. Okay, conditions precedent to making application for the building permit. So all these conditions have to be made. They have to record the plan. Again,
60, are we talking about final plans? That's a lot of plans. Are we just talking about the lotting plans?
which number are you on, Ed?
60?
3 copies is a lot? What do you
No,
mean?
he's just saying, he's talking about if you had to include all the building plans.
Have
They're
to
talking about the
record.
site plan probably,
You
right?
record the, right. What gets recorded? I thought maybe just engineering.
The subdivision,
plan?
yeah, subdivision plan,
Subdivision.
I would think.
Okay.
Why do we go from 27 to 59, by the way?
Because we're in a new category. Conditions,
59 is going back to regular conditions. 27 was just a subsection of
Oh, okay.
another numbered paragraph. And keep in mind, that's also gonna contain a new paragraph after all those other conditions are added. So 59 will be a substantially higher number, but it's unrelated to
Good.
27.
Can you go to the alphabet instead for that subsection? It's a little easier to read.
The language plans.
Then, yeah, good, yeah. Wait, there's 26 letters in the alphabet.
Well,
Yeah,
then do
hold on.
double-
Let's-
then do
let's
double
stay
A,
focused
double
And
B.
you
here.
started with AA.
Yeah.
Jesus,
words
Mary
to
and
figure out
Joseph. Fuck. Okay, so I'm down at 61. And you get into this again is where I get a little uncomfortable. 61A, copy of the request for the building permit application, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The board shall review the complete plans for conformance with this decision. The building department will not issue a building permit until receipt of the board's report that the complete plans conform to this decision. I mean, I'm okay, I guess, with keeping that within the board's purview, but you definitely need more time, you need time. Or it's all on the building department. What do we think?
Well, what have we done on other 40Bs?
Well, unfortunately, on Rugged Scott, what we did was I signed a one-pager that said everything was in compliance, and the review was not done by me. And I know at least once it was not something I should have signed. I think Marianne made that clear in a letter to me. I think. So I certainly won't be the chairman, so it won't matter, but I don't think anybody wants to do that again. So if it's the entire board,
I think that's the building inspector's responsibility. You just have to have confidence that the building inspector, if there's any doubt as to conformance with the reference plan, will come back and ask the board.
that works for me. I don't think the board should be looking, it's too much.
I just don't think we have enough time in 90 days to do all this work.
Well, this is different. This is if I come in for a building permit. But that's not what we
you mean
do. That's what
before
the
every
building
building
department
permit, we would
does.
have to review the application?
That's what it says.
Yeah, you're zoning, you're
Yeah.
giving someone the zoning, you're not
Well, we're at it.
you don't need to have this, but the intent behind putting it in, and what I tried to be is overly restrictive in the first draft.
Yeah.
You can
Yeah,
always take
totally.
stuff out, but, the intent of this was like similar to like HTC review, is that when they go in to get the building permit, then they go back and check, well, does this comply with the certificate of appropriateness type of thing. So it just was an ability of the building inspector to be able to confirm with you that these conform with your decision.
Well, I think, yeah.
It's just a lot of,
It's a
it's
lot
just
of
a
work,
lot of work
unfortunately.
when
Yeah,
we
but I-
all work and,
You know,
I mean, I'll do it. I mean, I would say the board would be willing to do it with adequate time.
Well, I think my only concern is because we've been so involved in this, it's very easy for us to look for the points that we're concerned about. And my concern with the building inspector, and I don't know, he's new, I don't know him that well, that, kind of reading this stuff fresh and not, it's a lot for him to,
Without anything.
without anybody that's been involved in the process, to kind of review.
I agree.
You could say the CEO does it.
Well, yeah.
No, I don't think that's a fair burden on you either. You're not a,
No, CEO.
No, he's not
CEO.
Marcus.
Well, he would be, they would need to
would do that.
review the building permit application anyway. So I don't know that,
Wouldn't he be the one reviewing the zoning decision?
That's what the building, part of the building permit fee
Yeah,
assumes the building inspector will review that.
yeah, because,
None of the board, let me tell you, this is different from all of the other 40Bs I've worked on. However, none of the boards want to get involved at this level.
yeah, I don't think we want to. I think it's too much,
And this is the request for any building permit?
yeah.
Yeah.
Like Sally homeowner decides they wanna
No, this is.
Well, we're
Yeah,
beyond,
special
no,
building
this
permit.
is precedent to making an application for a building permit. They would have to come to us, get an approval.
You have this in your other comprehensive
I
permit.
don't think so.
How did they come up with rugged Scott?
It's a good question.
Because they didn't want to go through HDC, so HDC was
right. They
Linda
requested that
Williams
they
and then
come
John
back to us.
Brescher and then me, and then.
It wasn't just
No, it
HDC.
had to do, with that condition about no garage
Yeah.
serving
Yeah.
a different lot that was approved under the plan, and you signed off on something for that, and there must have been a condition related to it.
Yeah.
I mean, I can revisit this whole section.
Take a look at
but
that.
Make sure you're not giving away any, I mean, again, my intent is to make sure that, as Lisa was saying, how does the building inspector, I mean, yeah, the building inspector can do it based on his expertise, but, do you wanna just give up that right to be able to give input at that point? You're free to if you want, but.
I mean, this is on the individual bill, so we would get a set of building permit applications.
I don't
yeah.
want to do it for 40 houses.
Well, I think it would become relatively, we'd be looking at setbacks, and then Marcus would look at it too. That'd be the issue. I'd want the double check to go on if we were gonna do it. Let's think about it.
Okay.
The site plan has to be given to us. And again, we have to then approve. I think it says here, the board shall review the layouts and profile.
Well, I think the site
It's
plan
just a
layout,
timing issue
Yeah,
again.
we
It's,
should,
that we definitely should review.
in light.
well, 100, I agree, but it needs to specify that period of time,
Yeah,
in my
that's
opinion.
fine.
Like recreation and maintenance.
Okay, on 61C, again, these are just more plans that we're reviewing. They would all be part of the building permit application. I'm not sure that we need to be involved, but we're gonna think about it.
I know for a fact you've done it before, but
Okay,
because it came up in Rugged Scott, we have a live issue with you.
yeah. Okay. But if that's the case, it's not just the chairman, chairwoman, chairperson.
No.
It's the board this time.
Let's just, You've been charged.
That might be reason not to review it. That's what it would not
Well,
be involved.
you've been charged to work with council on that, so we'll work. on
No, on that, yeah, no, that's fine. I'm saying, okay. This is more submittal. Conditions precedent to building, oh, these are all, each phase of the prior,
Just about E, I don't, E refers, I think, to a management, to a rental project.
Yeah.
We could get HOA and condo association in here someplace.
HOA condo, okay. I mean, then we talk about some filtration issues, fencing, limit of work. I think on limited of, I'm now on page 1964. This limit of work fencing, I personally think the entire site should be fenced with chain link to begin with, but that doesn't really, or how does everybody feel about fencing the limit of work?
Well, we're
You
gonna,
can fence a little bit of work with like a siltation fence or something in conjunction with putting in a split rail fence, which we've already required that they do.
So you think that's adequate?
I don't think
so.
you wanna
I
have
think
chain link around the entire
yeah,
development.
so.
from an aesthetic perspective.
Okay. Okay.
But I know we don't have a phasing plan, but they're not,
I guess, yeah, it would be more appropriate if there were a phasing plan you would say, because we did do this.
Then you
at-
would
look at
section off
stations,
that.
I thought it worked really well and looked, it was clear.
Don't go here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it was
Yeah.
safe for the people who were living there when phase 2 was being constructed. It was, cordoned off from phase 1 and it didn't look horrible for everybody driving by.
I mean, theoretically, it would make more sense for them to actually do the single-family units first.
Yeah, again, there's a lot of things that make more sense. I think at a minimum, you want to fence Old South,
Absolutely, I
or
want to fence that.
South Shore Road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Keep the site, but again, why wouldn't I, if I'm a neighbor, why wouldn't I want the limit of work to be very clear?
Well, it's gonna be
I don't
with a
want the
split
stuff
rail.
blowing into my yard.
A split rail and a siltation fence.
That's
What's
not
a
gonna,
siltation fence?
It's that fabric fence that the Concom makes you do. Not that,
I mean,
The orange one?
that's not gonna
Because
take care
they're
of,
usually
Because the people at
green.
Sagem's Path,
What's
even
the
though there's that
The orange is
25-foot
more like a-
barrier,
It's just a,
Yeah, with the holes
they're
in it.
pretty close
Yeah,
to
this
the
is like a
edge.
fabric.
oh, okay.
I know, okay.
Whatever, I don't know.
Well, let's think about it.
Okay.
Okay. So, again, back to the fence over on, on South Shore Road, I think it would be locked. There has to be some conditions. This is a big deal,
Right,
what's going
construction
on
site,
here.
Yeah.
There's a lot of activity. I think later on in here, it talks about you can't, or I would want to put in there, you can't park on the street, South Shore Road, no staging of equipment, no nothing. There should be no evidence that anything's going on there until you get within the 50-foot buffer. Okay, then on 66, I circled it, it's conditions related to construction, at least 48 hours prior to any initial site work, a pre-construction meeting shall be held with the applicant, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And this is probably implied and doesn't need to be said, but this assumes that all other preconditions are met by then.
Yes, you're not allowed to do initial site work, that has caveats earlier.
Okay.
Can we reference that though, or no,
I'm-
that's just duplicative?
Yeah, you can, I don't think it's necessary, but I'll double check.
65 reminded me, let's make sure we avoid the issue about it, Friggin' Scott, that you can't sell a lot to a third party.
Yeah.
Third-party builder
Oh, that's a great one.
without, and no sales of vacant lots.
No sales of vacant lots, no sales of, what about a partially finished building?
Well, saying no sale to a third-party builder?
No,
Yeah.
because cost certification is an integral part of 40B.
Yeah,
You can't do car certification if you sell a half-baked building.
yeah.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I buy the half, you know, there's a foundation in the ground. I'm a buyer. I buy it, and then I hire Jeff to build it.
Doesn't work in 40B.
Well, I know that, but
It's
that
not
should be
supposed to, but
explicit.
it happened, so.
I make it explicit.
Yeah, that's all I'm getting at. So basically, you can only sell the finished product,
Right,
the developer.
right.
Only sell, right.
That should be explicit.
I like that no sale of vacant lot, too.
Product that's received a certificate of
Okay, the product of CO, that's a good one, okay. Okay. Talked about,
Are you on the 410?
yes.
okay.
Okay.
Detail, blah, 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 state building code, and see, again, I have a note here on 70 about zone 2 should constantly be referenced, so there's no confusion as to the level of compliance. It all has to comply with zone 2. Fire chief, what else?
Where are you at?
71.
Okay.
Page 19.
On-street parking shall be prohibited? We're gonna have on-street parking, right?
Where's that?
At the end of the paragraph, 71.
On-street
On-street
parking
parking shall be prohibited except in those areas shown on the.
On page 20.
I'm adding language. Except in those areas shown on the comprehensive permit plan, signage prohibiting parking shall be installed and maintained as directed.
All right, you'll get that, George.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm at
73.
74, 75. 76, all the stumps will be removed, no burning. I was gonna add in there, you can't burn the stumps, you can't bury them. It says that already, no burying.
78, 79 are all make sense.
All right. Anything else coming up on 80, 81? The 81 basically says they have to pay fees of review, which is normal for 40B, I assume. Performance guarantee for each phase of the work.
You know, I mean, that reminds me of earlier, we need to decide what to do about board review and about whether you, I mean, that's really where those fees come in. Another place where I've seen a fee issue come in is where a building inspector says, I need engineering review of this. This isn't a building permit that I can review within my own time and, you know. So again, that's what I'm trying to get at here. I don't know if you have other things.
Normally down here, you wouldn't, the town wouldn't hire an engineer to review it. They would require the applicant to, you know, to have their own engineer sign off on it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Up the-
okay.
to
You know,
stamp
at their
it and to.
expense, of course.
And quite frankly, I don't think these buildings are,
Okay.
I mean, the big ones, you know, no, the language
Yeah,
should
it's
be in
gonna
there though.
You know, it's all gonna be stamped by a Mass PE, so.
Are you comfortable with that, George?
Yeah, we'll have to think about it a little more. I'm just, Ed doesn't like to be overly, you know, overly aggressive in this, but I also don't like to, you know, I'm trying to, again, I always try to deal with the unknown
Yeah.
unknowns. And so, especially with a fee issue, I've seen it come up where a building inspector doesn't want to rely on their stamped plan. He
Well,
wants an
that's-
engineering review. I've seen it come up.
Yeah.
But, so anyway,
Well, you could just add language, if the building inspector requires, applicant will
Yeah, that's a good
pay
idea.
for independent, whatever engineer review.
And Eleanor, on 81, is 30,000 bucks enough as a deposit to cover that, Well, it's,
Wait, what are we covering exactly here?
it's Ed's,
On 81, page 22.
Yeah, it's enough to cover, I mean, we
To
just need
start.
to keep it a certain level, minimum level.
Well, it talks about that, if it gets down to 5,000.
Yeah, I think that's enough for time.
Okay.
I mean, I can talk to Ed too. I just wanna make sure you're protected about any fee that you may need to charge, yeah.
All right, here, just because I know Ed's gonna leave and George has to be upstairs in a minute, so, 87, skipping ahead. The applicant shall complete construction within 3 years from the date of this permit, or the date this permit becomes final, unless such time shall be extended in writing by the board. Is that sort of a norm?
I thought it was. I can talk to Ed about it.
I'll talk to George, I don't think it is now when you're trying to sell this many houses at those price points.
Yeah, talk,
So
I mean,
you
you're-
could say subject to marketing, reasonable marketing conditions or something, or an extension,
Well, it can be extended.
it can be extended.
Well, we know that they wouldn't
I
be able to
know
finish
3
it.
years, it's not gonna be built in 3 years,
Right.
but they have the ability to obtain an extension.
oh, again, if it's relatively normal, fine. Does the board have any problem?
I can talk about it with Ed, but that's
Well,
how
I-
I drafted it, is that it's 3 years, that's standard. It's obviously not gonna be done in 3 years and they can get an extension.
What are they saying they can do it in?
Wasn't it more like 5?
I honestly don't know. I thought it doesn't really matter, as long as it's relatively normal.
But the reason to cut it down to the 3, and again, I can tell, I'm not wedded to this, but the reason to have it at 3 is if it ends up being some type of disaster, some, you know, fiasco of a site, and you don't want to extend it,
Yeah,
you know, so that's,
I'm totally comfortable with
I
it.
think you put 3 years and maybe
Okay.
extend it for good
I just didn't know. It's fine. 90 is important. The applicant shall keep the site and the adjoining existing roadway area clean during construction. I think it's very important that it's very explicit, no off-street parking, no staging. You gotta clean the road, as much as many details as possible about that.
And that's where the plan that shows how existing residents will be protected during completion of later phases of construction. Or that might be worth a separate.
91 is important. We talked about it. No clear cutting of the site. You can only clear as necessary. Should there be some sort of review of that, or should that be more explicit? You can cut for the roadways.
well, it'd be
and-
nice if we had some sort of a phasing plan.
Yeah, so that's part of the phasing.
So you gotta, you gotta
And
cut
what
and
about
clear for
the-
the roadways, then you would have to cut and clear for the first phase.
Do we have to put in something about the bats?
Yes.
No cutting before.
Oh, no
They
bats.
said they would have,
Yeah.
I don't
Before
remember the
July or
dates, but they
something?
said they wouldn't cut during
Yeah,
the mating season
Yeah.
or?
no cutting in June and July, I think.
That's in there, though, isn't it? Should be.
I did not see that in
Didn't see
here.
it.
I did see something about natural
no, the
area.
reason I didn't have it in there, and I can add it, I didn't have it in there because the permit's subject to the NHESP conditions.
Oh, got
And they're
it.
not allowed to disturb the site until that whole appeal process is exhausted.
Right.
So
We don't need to put it in then.
but in addition to that, they did say they
I mean,
would.
they agreed to it, so you could put it in there if you
Yeah.
want.
Yeah.
I just think the public worked so
Yeah.
hard on that, like, I think it would be important.
And the town paid first, too.
Yeah.
Okay, Ed, I know you have to leave, but you guys mind? We'll continue until 4,
Yeah, sure.
and then
Yeah,
George can go upstairs. Is that okay, George?
Yep.
You're okay with
Yeah,
that?
it's a busy.
Are you
boat.
upstairs,
You're
too?
taking a commuter boat. You're taking the commuter boat, and it gets
She's
pretty
saying you
full.
should go.
Sorry.
I don't want you to lose a decent seat.
Bye-bye.
Pony up for the
Captain's
captain's quarters and then you get a bigger seat.
For $3.
It goes to charity.
Not
Not
anymore.
At $3 if it does.
Oh, no, only in the winter, I thought.
No, the $3 goes all the time.
And then how much do they charge in the summer?
It's like
I
$10.
thought it was only $3 to sit there.
That's in the winter, when it's all charity. Make that a condition.
That's crazy. It's for another another day.
All right,
Moving
moving on, 32, yeah. I mean, 92 seems to be,
That seems reasonable.
totally makes sense.
93 makes sense, it
Yeah.
should be part of that phasing, it's part of that plan.
94, same. 95,
95 all makes sense.
96, prior to issuance of certificate of occupancy. And, okay, yeah, so before they get any CO, we need to be, the board needs to, again, review and approve or whatever, in a reasonable period of time, the management plan basically has been funded and et cetera, et cetera. That makes sense to me. Maybe a little bit more language, does everybody think, or? We good with that?
Yes, that's
It's
between
up to
96
George
and
if he feels he
97?
needs more language.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because you're saying he doesn't mention the management plan or the improvement specified in
Yeah.
its decision, is
I
that?
mean, it would be per the management plan that's part of this.
Right.
So you're adding,
Right, the management homeowners, or
Yeah. Okay, no COs until the place is reasonably safe. Okay, performance guarantees. I didn't have anything other than 101B would just change to 1.15 times.
1.5.
Not
1.5 times.
1.5, yeah. Then the waivers we have to talk about one more time.
yeah, the waivers are not that, it's not that crucial, because you're only gonna grant the waiver to the extent required to allow this construction. It's not gonna be, there's not really much for you to deliberate that.
No, we've deliberated much of it. I mean, as I said,
You just need to cross all the, dot all the i's and cross the t's with respect specifically to what you're waiving, because everything else is preserved, so that's.
there are a couple of them like frontage and side.
That's why I just frankly needed more time.
Yeah, that's fine. So I had some other notes. I would like something in there if possible, or we should discuss it, where the building permit application, and maybe this is already covered, but the building permit applications are limited if somehow a condition isn't met along the way. And I don't really have a great, well, I mean,
You
example.
want some sort of leverage?
Yeah, some leverage that things are getting done at the end. Definitely at the end. I think that a certain number of COs should be held back until, until all the infrastructure is. If you're not putting the final binder coat down until the very end,
We could hold the ones back for that last phase, whatever that phase is.
again, without the benefit of a phasing
Right.
plan, it's hard. So I would just pick an arbitrary, no, it wouldn't be arbitrary, a number based on our final number. No CO, and no building permits this time either. You don't even get to build them until it's done. Because we did run into a problem where, maybe, I don't know. We
Maybe
should,
no building permit until it's done.
well, the real leverage is,
I thought I was talking to, some of
If
it we're
there's an
reading too
issue.
fast, because I thought I had something
Yeah.
about a phasing plan in there.
you did, that
did, we
they're
don't
gonna do it.
know.
I'm
Never
just
seen
saying,
one.
until we see it, we don't, it's hard to say, okay, we won't give you the CO on phase number D until
Yeah.
X, Y, and
A,
Z.
B, and C are complete. So it's difficult, but I think,
Isn't there normally a release of the?
yeah,
lots?
Form J, that came up in another one. we should arguably, you should have to get a Form J on every, how does Form J work, Eleanor?
Well, they have a covenant, and that's Form I, and it's, you know, it's just typical, like a boilerplate document, planning board issues them for subdivisions. And there's a series of conditions, and then they request a release when they're gonna go ask for a building permit or refinance or whatever, all of the above. And then we meet about it, it's on our agenda, and we say yes or no. Sometimes they'll be asking to release multiple lots, you might say yes to all or yes to some.
I think we should
And
have
then
that.
you
yeah.
sign the release, and they record it, and then they can move forward with the next step. But
I-
they can't pull a building permit unless the lot is released.
Right, and typically, what do you get to start? Some percentage?
Yeah, typically, right off the bat, that you issue release of, like, for instance, the open, you know. I mean, I have to look at what we have in Frederick Scott, I can send that to you.
Well, forget Rugged Scott, what would you
No,
get
that
if,
we did not do a covenant for Sachem's. There was one for Rugged Scott.
What do you
Yeah.
mean by a covenant?
A covenant is like the restricting the lot, so to make sure that certain, this is what the planning board does for subdivisions. So to
Oh,
make sure
right.
that
I
certain
remember-
structure, certain,
I remember it on the
Conditions
Rugged
are-
Scott. We didn't do it on Sachems because we had a phasing plan and it was,
they came back with that later though, remember? Quite a bit later when they came to modify.
the phasing plan?
Yeah, maybe there was some
No.
stuff about the phasing plan in the original, but it was
It was.
pretty heavily modified and also clarified when they came back to modify a couple years ago when they were about to start construction.
Oh, yeah, maybe, before
A
they
lot more
started
detailed
construction.
plans and so forth.
Right.
well, for the next meeting, can you give us some sort of bullet point outline on the covenants? I think there should be something.
I do
I think
too.
so too.
On releasing the lots for building permits, and then ultimately, the final X number of COs are not issued until certain preconditions are met. The landscape escrow, I think that I can't remember, was there a specific language about a bond for the landscape? And
We
not,
talked about it the last time.
yeah, not individual lots, but the site.
Actually, we didn't talk about it. We talked about it because Ed Pesci was here for Sachem's Path.
Right, and as I
But they
said,
had one.
I think theirs was pegged at 500 grand. And he was just, yeah, so it would be, I think, more than that because this is bigger. I have no idea how to come up with that number.
Well, how was the 500,000? Was that based on a budget? How was that determined?
It's a good question, I don't remember.
We don't have a budget, do we?
No, I'm saying if it was based on a budget, yeah, we don't have the luxury.
So we'll have to come up with a number. I mean, if Sachem's was 500 and it was X acres, I mean, we can come up with a number that I think is reasonable. Okay? The pool sizes as noted on the plan. Oh, and there was nothing about traffic mitigation,
Right.
which we did talk about. And I believe if in the record it was 100.
Yeah, I think that, it was actually something I intended to do, but I forgot to put the section in about additional conditions relating to traffic mitigation. Be it in those sections which have the placeholders.
Yeah, all right, I just noted it.
And what are those conditions?
Well, one of them, the mitigation issues was the straight-up cash payment
Oh.
to the town
Okay, I just,
for future, I think that, I don't even think we ever discussed the idea of a connecting bike path from the site to the,
Oh, we did.
well, we can look.
A long time ago, they showed, we talked about a bike path and whether or not they had to cross the street or, I can't,
I don't think crossing the street makes a lot of sense. You're right, you're right, you're relatively close to the intersection.
right. Yeah, I just remember it being discussed. I just don't remember where we ended up.
We should look at that.
There were also conditions about public water in addition to what we have here from the peer review.
Yeah.
You can
Yeah. Then on the HOA, on the last time we did it, well, I think Rugged and Sachem's, the developer has to keep the skin in the game until the very end. That's a double-edged sword because the homeowners begin to chafe if the developer's not doing what he should be. But by the same token, I think it's the better way to do it. What does everyone think about that?
I agree
Developers
100%.
to be in control of that homeowners association, so the
So-
last units.
Till the last unit sold?
Well,
I don't think he has to be in
know
control
about
100%, but he
sometimes that
needs-
works against the homeowners.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I'm saying, but by the same token, if there isn't, yeah,
mean,
it's a
skin in the
double-edged
game.
I
sword.
think he
just-
stays in control until it's like, till 51% or something is by owner, owner occupants, but that he.
Oh, I
but
think
he-
more than that.
Yeah,
You
it
think
should
more
be,
than
it
that?
should be more.
I had 90%.
Much
Oh.
Well, if they finish at 51% and then they just,
I'm not saying be out of it, just be.
but what prevents him from leaving if he doesn't have enough?
Well, he would, the
Because he still
developer,
owns 49%.
he would still have to chip in for 49%,
Yeah.
whatever.
He just doesn't have controlling interest.
But what we've
Right.
done in the past, and I think it was more like the 90 or some larger number, I think the developer, we'd have to look, but I think the developer paid all the HOA fees until very much the end.
Is that what we did at Sachem's, really?
Thought so.
No.
'Cause
No?
that would be a lot.
That'd be
5 years?
It ensures that you
I
complete.
believe that's what it was, something like that at Rugged.
They pay 100% of the HOA fee?
I may be wrong about that.
It's a good carrot to ensure the developer.
This is, well, at least he's doing the right thing.
Yeah. And then what about the condo association?
But you want to
fees?
set, you're talking about setting specific numbers, Ed, to the, or
Percentages.
percentages, right?
And
I
then
don't,
Would we do the same thing for the condo?
yeah, again, I just want to emphasize what George has said repeatedly. We can still vote any way we want on this, and it's, there are a lot of complicated issues that we don't really have information on. And the more we deliberate, the more it becomes apparent. So, I'm not advocating going down one or another plan, but just keeping in mind, I don't want you to think that we have to go one way or the other. And again, one of the other issue or potential solution is to simplify things and get rid of all of a sudden there are no condos, and because we have no information on any sort of management plan on that, which I guess might be normal, but anyway. We have to adjourn, so my question is, do we think we're gonna get through this with one more meeting? And then the 7th?
HTC again.
I don't think so, unfortunately.
Can we do the next meeting in the evening then? Sorry.
Do it in the when?
Evening as opposed to in the middle of the day, or at least at the
Well,
end of the
the
day.
problem is for George and Ed.
oh, right.
I mean, how late you wanna go?
Yeah, but I can stay over.
So,
Our next meeting is supposedly Friday the 31st.
No, I was gonna say if we're gonna do an additional meeting, do the next one, rather than have to,
Yeah.
I hear you, and
like,
I'm
work at noon for
sympathetic.
one, it's,
It's really, yeah.
I mean, 31st, let me talk, George, when is it realistic that we would have draft 2?
Draft 2, realistic would be. Wednesday, May 29.
and should we have the HGC stuff before that, or no? We're saying we'll,
I'm willing to try to bang out one other meeting if, before the 29th. I mean, we could just
and we
keep it
just,
specific
we don't talk
to,
about the decision at all, we just look at the HGC?
This room appears to be available on Wednesday, May 29th in the evening, and Thursday.
Wednesday the 29th.
I don't know, what does everyone else feel? Do you think we can get through it one more meeting?
No?
No, not even close.
I think we have to do one. I don't think the HTC stuff will take long.
I can do the evening on the 29th, or I can do the 30th.
How are we gonna do the HTC stuff? I mean, we can.
We're gonna have to go,
We're
we're
not gonna
gonna,
design the buildings.
no, but
No,
we're
no.
gonna pretend we're the HTC and, well, not pretend, we are gonna be the HTC. We're gonna look at each plant, each elevation and say, which we did,
Which we did, so I don't think
and
it's
there were
gonna, it won't
changes
take,
made, and
won't take that
to the
long.
better,
But we haven't looked at the
the duplex or the
duplexes look
fourplex.
decent, the fourplex. is
I don't
one
think it's gonna
elevation.
take
I don't think it'll take that long, but
Dave, but I mean, we just blew through, about 15 pages without maybe talking.
but then, I mean, how are we gonna do things like paint colors? Like, I feel strongly that all the buildings should be painted, nothing should be natural.
That's what we're gonna say in the
But you
decision.
can't do it by, just say you can use
Yeah.
paint out of whatever the HGC allows for
Yeah.
trim.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah. We're not gonna say this one's white, that one's blue, that one's
Right.
green.
and these are the sash color and.
No, I think you get to pick from menu choices. Just like, well, that's why I asked Eleanor to bring us the CEO, basically using this as a template.
Right, there's no chimneys or
Yeah,
anything.
so I don't think it's gonna be,
It won't take that long.
Anyway.
But I still think it would be hard to do that in addition to go through the decision and the waivers.
I agree.
So we should do
So-
one more meeting where we can do this and maybe the waivers and then
Okay,
the last day.
let's look at dates. George, you obviously are a critical part of this.
I can't be here on the 29th.
Okay, what,
Do you need me for the HDC review?
No.
Probably not.
what we need you for is when we digress. But we could keep it very tight on the,
Well, I just can't be here on the 29th.
yeah, no,
Why don't we do the HCC on the
I can-
29th, and we can police ourselves without digressing too much?
okay. Well, then that leaves one meeting for any sort of the 31st for, and we would be willing to stay till, let's say, 7 that night, if we can't get it done in 5 hours. I mean, we've been,
We're at we're in the cafeteria that night?
No,
Oh, that's why,
I
sorry.
can't book the cafeteria from here.
What?
all right,
I can't book the cafeteria from here, I have to,
Sorry, that's what I have in my, where are we?
we could be here.
here.
Okay.
According to what I've seen online, which is hopefully accurate, this room is available from 3 PM on.
On Friday?
No, on the 29th. Let's- Okay, so let's just go to the 29th. We'll do the HTC. George doesn't have to be here. We'll keep it, that's kosher, right? We can deliberate without you.
Yeah, I mean,
Or is it-
I could be here on the 28th or the 30th.
What about the 28th?
I just can't be here on the 29th.
Yeah, that's fine.
That's fine.
28th works for me.
What
can
about
do-
the draft decision not being ready?
We're not gonna talk about the decision that day,
Just
though.
HTC.
Just
What
HGC and
time?
maybe waivers.
So now you wanna do Tuesday the 28th?
Now, let me just say,
Eleanor, you're better to have counsel here.
yeah, I agree.
Not because you need supervision, but
I agree.
you need counsel here. It's
No, we want you here, George.
So, are we talking the 29th? No, the 28th?
28th.
No, I guess I don't care.
The 28th is actually better for me.
28th, and let me just say about the decision, if everybody rereads the decision, rereads the other decisions from the other ones, and has other things that they want to talk about at that meeting, so George could maybe last minute incorporate them into draft 2, yeah, we can do that.
Let's do it Tuesday then.
Tuesday.
Tuesday, the
What time?
28th. I don't care. No, just, I mean, I don't mind doing it at 4. If you guys want to start a little earlier,
Like 4 to 8?
Is that okay with you, George?
That's great, yeah.
Okay.
It works for you.
or if you want to make the boat at 8.
No, don't worry about me in the boat. I just can't be here Wednesday night. That's the only
Okay.
thing.
Tuesday, 4 to 8.
4 o'clock.
Okay.
And by that point, we could have, like the charts maybe for, is Eleanor gonna put together the chart of the different the different buildings and the frontage and the,
Yeah, I'm gonna make a mock-up and I'll send it to you, and see if
Yeah.
that's what you're looking for, just so I'm clear.
okay.
But I received the document from your.
Yeah, no, I was talking about the other charts too, with regards to lot sizes, parking spaces.
Oh,
It might be nice
Start
to
the
have
chart
those.
and we can, I think the
Massage.
chart is a good idea, it can encompass a lot of things.
Yeah. Okay,
And you are keeping the 31st.
yeah.
Good.
I mean, yeah.
I like these pens.
so could you, could we?
Well, I was gonna say, if it's feasible to have that decision for the 28th meeting, it'd be-
Right, I know, I
But I-
articulated that thought in my head, I thought I would leave it there, but if I can't, you know, the more I can get you by Tuesday, I will.
thanks, George.
Thank you.
Okay, so can I get a motion to adjourn?
Are we at 2 o'clock on Friday?
On the 31st, we're 2 o'clock. I will not be here, but again, I saw it coming.
The 31st.
2 o'clock.
2 o'clock.
Yes, I will send a reminder. They need a motion to adjourn.
Oh, I made the, who made the motion?
I'll make that motion.
I'm not gonna get upstairs, thank you.
Thanks,
Thanks,
George.
George.
Thank you.
One more?
I'll second that.
Yeah, thank you.
All in favor?
All those
What are
in
these
favor?
chocolate chip cookies on you?
Say aye.
I know.
Aye.
Aye.
I didn't eat lunch. I was like, oh, they'll have cookies. I don't have to. That's okay.
I'm at a wedding, I just got back